Hey, welcome to episode number 47 of Killer POV. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rob G. from FEARNET and Icons of Fright. Joining me as always, Elric Kane.
Hello, Rob.
Inside Horror.
Yeah, bunch
Jump
of stuff.
Cut.
Not Dread Central
Jump
Live.
Cut. Not.
It was a show called Inside Horror that I was relatively proud of. But
Yeah.
now there's a show called Dread Central Live. And
Yeah.
that's not my show.
with babes.
Some of the
You're
same
not-
people. I think
you're-
there's a girl called Gore Horse, so you know it wasn't my show.
You're not nearly as good looking as the three women that now host that show. I'm sorry. But you know who is good looking?
Well,
You know who is good looking is Rebekah McKendry
Rob
from
Galluzzo.
Fangoria.
Oh, y'all are just trying to butter me up.
Damn
I don't know what
straight.
you want, but
Yeah.
more
want
beer.
anything.
I mean,
Another
after that
baby.
last episode, I mean,
Look, apologies. If you're,
Oh, yeah.
if
Straight
you're
off the
back.
top. We should be
Holy
apologizing
crap,
for our
we're
last
so
show.
sorry. We try different things here.
yeah, that was a little bad shit,
It was a good idea
guys.
on paper.
I don't drink a lot, and it's like right at the top of the show, Dave Parker shows up and he's like, I see, and the reason I never drink when we do the show is because you guys always bring beer, and I just don't like beer. And Dave Parker
Jack.
shows up and he has Jack, and I'm like, okay, now we're talking. And then I've got a cup of ice with a little bit of ice and a lot of Jack, and like an hour in, I'm like, man, I have not been this drunk in a really long time.
It was a lot of fun
So-
making that show. I'll tell you that
was.
much. I didn't try to listen to it. I know Mike Mendez turned it off after 15
That's what he
minutes,
told
calling
you.
you out.
But we did get a lot of positive feedback.
we did. A lot of
from
people
our
enjoyed
list.
it.
There were people sending us messages like, this is the most fun show ever. And I'm like, I don't remember a lot
Yeah, I
of
don't
it.
remember
so
anything.
I'm really
And you
hoping
guys
I
don't
didn't
listen back. I try to listen back just to make sure everything sounds all right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I listened to a little bit at the start as it sounded normal until I should just go to the end where Dave Parker at the end was like, whoa.
The slurring.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know he was slurring by the end, or he was pausing a lot, where he'd be like, "You know what I think," and then it would pause.
You know
But
what's- you know what's not
Parker
in the
in the
room?
booth is laughing at us because he was like the silent watcher throughout the whole thing. And by the end of it, by the third hour, I was sober enough to sense what was going on and hear everybody talking all at the same time, and see Parker kind of grinding his teeth in the booth.
Yeah.
You know what's really
And,
disturbing is that Mike Williamson came in here sober. And he still talked about the titles he talked about. You guys talking about Freddy's Dead. You know what I mean? Those were
The
sober
Mangler.
humors. And The Mangler. I am going to rewatch The Mangler. I think The Mangler is the only one I was convinced
You
to
actually-
at least rewatch.
I went home and I tried to convince. We had some people over last weekend, and I was like, "Come on, guys, let's watch The Mangler," and no one wanted to watch it with me.
I want to watch it still.
sad.
And you know what? You swore
Theatrical would
on
be
last
cool.
week's show that by this show you would watch Blair Witch 2, which I know you have not done.
But because there's a reason I'm not. And I can't talk about the reason. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes. Well,
so that's the problem.
we'll get to that, but it is like $388 on Amazon right now if you want to buy
I
it.
would
And
love
you get
to
the CD
own
soundtrack
it.
with it.
I would love to see it in a theater. That's my problem. The same with Mangler. It's like,
You with
I
the
want to.
theatrical.
Yeah.
But that's not going to
So
happen.
this
Or
could be the
Blu-ray,
next
okay.
Killer POV secret screening that we don't tell anybody about.
We could do
Oh.
that. Maybe.
Then Elric
I would
have
rather.
to watch
I'd rather
it
it be a
at your
movie I
cafe.
want to see. See,
God.
I'm dragging.
Oh, shit, I've been trying to get you to watch Ticks for
Okay,
months.
okay, again. Not a movie I want to see. I will watch it because you're telling me, but like I was saying about some of the movies I like, I find something, I get really obsessed and want to find it, and then you're kind of being driven towards it. When somebody says, "Hey, watch Ticks," now it might prove to be an amazing movie. I'm not saying it's not, but there's nothing in me
So,
that wants to see
because
it. And
you
Blair
did
Witch
not-
2, even less, because
So-
I've seen it and I didn't like
But
it.
that's the lamest excuse ever. It's like because you did not organically unearth
it's not
it
about
because
organic.
Rob didn't,
No, it's because there's nothing about it that has a hook for me. Like you tell me a thing about insects, I'm just like, eh. Now, there was something you told me. Tony Randall directed it.
Yeah.
Okay, that is almost hook
Amy,
because
Amy
of how good
Dolan's
Hellraiser.
from Witchboard 2 stars in it.
Boom.
Now you're
I want to
in.
see Ticks so bad. I just got so hard for Ticks, you wouldn't even know how hard I got for Ticks. So I'm going to tweet that later.
All right, so let's bring order to the show since we had no order. Actually, we had this. I think our soundboard privileges have already been taken away from us.
Oh, yeah, what the fuck? Where'd that soundboard go?
It's like the kids that
Parker took it away.
Wait, Parker, we can be good, and we even have cool like sound bites we're going to add to it. Wow,
No,
we're
they
really
took
being
it away,
punished.
guys.
Maybe next time.
We overused it.
All right, so
Tell them the
so-
truth. We are actually in our garage today. We are not at a studio
We've been
anymore.
kicked out of the Geek Nation
show was taken
studios.
away from us.
We're recording in a garage.
Becca got
That's
fired.
what's
Rob
happening.
got fired.
We're all homeless now, guys.
Yes, we're in our pajamas recording the show. All right, let me get some plugs out of the way because just in case nobody listens to the end of the show, I want to get
Well,
that
they will
stuff
because
out.
Kevin will be there.
That's true.
Yeah, we do. We have Kevin Tenney coming on.
Yeah.
We do.
He directed
Soon.
Witchboard 2, Witchboard 1. I mean,
And
Witchboard 1 was the very original Witchboard was like one of my favorite films in the 80s. And Night of the Demons.
And even though we have no idea what we're going to ask him, and I hope we get to Night of the Demons. Well, you never know with time.
You
We could
never
run
know.
out of time, but
You never know.
we didn't pre-tape it, so who knows? Anything could happen.
This is in honor of the Scream Factory releases of both
Yes,
Witchboard,
which were yesterday.
and by the time this airs, this week.
This
They
week.
came out this week.
I even brought my copy of Witchboard to have him sign. I hope he signs it.
Fancy. They are great, by the way, and we'll delve into that when we talk to him. But Scream
Plugs.
Factory.
Let's do plugs. Boom, boom, boom.
Plugs.
Plugs.
And then we'll get back to that. Okay, so plugs. Comments. Comments on the website on Geek Nation. They've implemented it. They disappeared briefly. They're back. They've implemented Discus. So you can go on the Geek Nation website, go to any one of our shows, just comment, be active on there. Same thing with iTunes. It really helps us a lot if you go and rate the show and leave a few words about it. So far, everything that's on there is very positive, and we thank you for it. But yeah, we just want to spread the word and get the show out there some more. So please comment both on the Geek Nation site and on iTunes. We really appreciate that. Let's do some personal ones. Elric, I'm gonna throw it to you. You just announced that you're gonna do a new trivia night for Badass Digest.
Yes.
Movie trivia.
Yeah, me and Brian Collins I had been approached so many times, even before horror trivia actually existed. I was approached so many times about movie trivia just because, Jump Cut is not set up as a horror. It wasn't set up that way. So nothing really happened for a long time. I had mentioned to Brian that I needed a partner. I can't just put on a trivia and expect anyone to come. So just like Becca and Ryan do such a great job with horror, he said, well, Badass Digest would be cool. And I love the idea of calling something Badass Digest. We don't know if this is going to be a regular thing. This might just be one time that we do it for fun.
Right.
But if it goes well, then why not? Because the cool thing is, what I wanted was the idea that on a team, and horror trivia, you get like everyone's so obsessed and kind of have the same interest.
Yeah.
But I thought it'd be really fun to have teams that have to be put together by people who really have very different interests. Otherwise, you'll lose. You cannot win by being general knowledge, because one thing might be Bond films, one might be Oscars, one might be foreign cinema. So it'll be really fun to see what happens. It might be a disaster, but
yeah, I'm trying to come up with a super team, but then I'm like, I don't know anybody who knows comic books or there's always like one little niche theme.
The super team.
You?
In this category, I believe I won't need. No, I'm going to.
Really?
Me and Jackson
Interesting.
Stewart are
Is it
going to go
just
together.
movies?
General movies, I think.
It's going to be movies, and it's going to be all categories, I think, is the idea. But who knows?
Okay,
Devin
if
might
it's-
go more geek culture. I
See,
don't
that's
know.
what I was curious about. Because if it's just movies, I think I'm okay. If it even delves into Star Trek, I've definitely kind of, I can handle my own there. But as soon as he's like, in this comic from 1960, I'm
Well,
going
it's
to be
called
like,
movie
I'm
trivia,
totally up.
so
Okay,
it
so then we're a
shouldn't-
little bit
They
more
might reference
centered.
comics, but no one's really talked about it. It's all kind of come together quick, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's taking place Thursday, February 27th.
The week after horror trivia.
I think Ryan Turek and I are going to try to form like a super team.
Yeah.
Or just sit in the back and
Just
heckle
sit-
everybody.
Heckle Collins.
That's
I think he
kind of
deserves
Collins
it.
is hosting.
He's
I had
co-hosting it.
no
Well, no, and
idea.
here's the exciting.
Ferracci.
I don't know if you guys, Devin Ferracci's obviously got a big online presence, but the thing that's exciting to me is just like the LA Slasher, who I never knew, Film Crit Hulk. It's been driving me crazy because I don't know who this guy is, and I read this blog. He's a really good writer, but it's such a character that I can't imagine the human behind it. So I think he's going to be one of the guys.
Oh my
so
God.
you'll physically.
Wow.
I know people go to Fantastic Fest, know who he is, and he walks around.
Right.
But so he might be there.
All right, cool.
There you go.
Nice.
One of my personal plugs, as of right now, some of you may or may not know that I produced and engineered a podcast for Dexter, the official one for Showtime, Dexter Wrap Up, with Scott Reynolds, who was one of our guests on the show before. And he is now on The Following season 2, and we are doing an official podcast for The Following, which just went live right before I came here tonight.
There was an episode that where like some people got killed and there was murder and stuff. It's
That's
crazy.
every one of them.
It's crazy.
In the
Everyone.
following, no way.
And there's a
Yes.
ticking clock. No, it feels like Jack Bauer. Like it's totally like 24, but with murders and serial killers. It's
This season's insane. I've been.
I've seen the first
fun.
couple, and I thought they're pretty decent. I
Yeah,
much preferred them to last season.
Actually, right now they're up to episode 3. You can watch all 3 of them on Fox's website. I think it's like fox.com/watch the following. And then you could just find it either on the Facebook page or my Twitter or whatever. But we're doing exactly like we did with Dexter. We're doing individual podcasts that pertain to each episode. So we talk to the writer of the episode and then a star from it. So the first one's Kevin Williamson and Kevin Bacon, which is pretty badass.
That is really good.
And Kevin Williamson has never done a podcast before, which is the first thing he says when we get him on there. And it's just a lot of fun. He's like, look, it's a cult of serial killers. It's ludicrous, but we're having fun here.
Yeah.
So he's pretty open about, how
I believe the plausibility
crazy
of it.
the show is,
which is good.
That's part of it. It's popcorn entertainment. But
Can we segue to it just while you're on TV, and I'll come back for
of
more.
course.
Speaking of TV, if you're not watching it, you're insane. The best thing on TV all year is True Detective, and they skipped this week by far. It's not even close to anything else.
The fifth
right
person
now
to tell me today that I need to be watching
Partly
this
it's
show.
because, it is going towards a horror thriller, serial killer kind of, I imagine. We don't know where the story's going, but it's taking its time, but the thing is, because it's only 8 or so episodes, they can get this incredible level of talent. McConaughey's almost better in this than he even was in Dallas Buyers Club. He's kind of scary and unnerving, even though he's the good guy.
Right.
It's a very interesting show. But specifically for horror fans out there, if you saw Texas Chainsaw 3D?
The Next Generation.
If you saw that last year and you were frustrated, if you're 14 years old and you're a man right now, you're a boy, you're out there, you look at movies and you look at nudity and you're interested in that thing. I want to speak to you directly right now. There's a crazy fucking mad nut house nude scene in this show with that actress, and it is insane.
Which one? Oh, you're talking about Texas Chainsaw 3D.
Insane.
Okay.
With her in True Detective.
Oh, yeah.
It's and apparently it's kind of funny because she was kind of
Alexandra
prudish about doing nudity in that.
Yeah, totally.
It's kind of like otherworldly, and it's all Woody Harrelson. It's hilarious because Woody Harrelson's, I think it's just him playing in the past, so he's meant to be 20 years younger. And you're just like, this is just so fucked up that Woody Harrelson playing 20. But I am just joking, but it is if you were 14, I remember being 14, that would have made my year.
Wow.
That's how good it was. But it's a really good show. It's slow burn. They missed a week because of the Super Bowl, but totally fascinated by that. And by conversely, I think, I don't want to go into detail about American Horror Story, but, I remember a few weeks ago when that started, I remember going, this is probably the best season. This is really cool. This is really fun. And then I started to realize the problem with the show in general, which I like the show. But I think I did tweet about it. But basically, it really is like having a franchise of a genre. So it's like it starts as Scream. The first 5 episodes are Scream. The next 5 are Scream 2. The next 4 are Scream 3. And by the end, you're at Scream 4. And that's what every season's like. By the end, it goes so off the rails and starts copying itself and is a diluted version of what it started as. It's so frustrating. So it's like one season of this crazy ass show ends up being like the bad tail end of a franchise, and it's so frustrating. I thought the last 2 episodes were 2 of the worst episodes I've ever seen in television in my life.
I liked them.
They were so bad, it's not even funny. I thought, I'm not kidding. And I liked everything up to that point. It was just what? Why
I loved the 7 Wonders. That was the final episode. I thought it was great.
I really thought it was terrible TV.
Wow.
I'm not in the minority because I know I was reading Twitter. Everyone was like, the wheels came off that show.
Yeah.
I think it happens every season. That's the problem. I don't think it's inconsistent.
See, I agreed with that on Asylum. I did not like the last episode of Asylum. And even, the first season when they did the final episode, no one really knew what it was going to be.
Yeah, and that worked because it was a surprise.
It worked because they literally, they pretty much blew up the whole house. I mean,
the first episode of the first season is the worst pilot I'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
It was like a season in one episode. They just pushed so much in that.
But I mean, by the end of the first episode, I am going to assume that most people have seen it at this point, so I'm going to spoil it. But I mean, everybody's dead at that point, so everybody's like, what the hell are they going to do next? And at that point, they hadn't really announced that it was going to be completely reinventing itself, so it worked because you were like, what the hell can they do? They've killed everybody on the show.
Yeah.
But now, I kind of liked where Coven ended.
I'm sure some people did.
The way that the pattern that it has followed for the past 2 seasons is we've got all these whole people. We're going to show how they kind of implode. And then by the end, there is no way we could continue this story on because there's absolutely nothing left. We have obliterated everything. This one didn't do that. It ended with a new breath. And then
I think if it halfway through somebody had said, actually, this is the first time. The only way you could have surprised me is saying this will actually become a series. Instead of ending, it could have become a series, and I might have found that interesting.
I would be bored if it kept going, though.
I don't know.
I liked the concept of the final.
For me, it came off
I'm way behind, so I don't know. I'm just
one man.
You got to watch, Rob, because you got to get caught up.
Yeah.
But
we can discuss.
But it's a shame because I really liked where it started. It just moved so quickly at times with storylines and stuff, But whatever, it's TV and it's horror TV and it's, there's a lot more coming out. I'm very excited about Hannibal. And Michael Pitt being cast in this season is playing the Gary Oldman character. I mean, it's to me, that's hot,
And Catherine Isabel is his sister.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be so good.
Which, that character was in the book, Hannibal.
I didn't know she's not in the movie.
Yeah, but they cut her out of the movie. In the book, she's like this giant, bodybuilding, lesbian
Oh,
that
weird.
takes care of her brother, who she knows is a pedophile.
Oh, wow.
But they eliminated that character completely from the book. So now that they, I just described that to you.
Yeah, you
but
have to
now
think it
picture
through.
Catherine and Isabel from American Mary.
Well, and I think I
Snaps.
read something saying that she would be a love interest to Hannibal.
Interesting.
Which would be hard to imagine him.
I see that her and like Michael Pitt, I feel like they'd probably go with a more incestuous kind of relationship.
Maybe,
That seems like it would make more sense.
But he was so good in Boardwalk Empire that I'm really interested.
I'm curious. Yeah,
what they'll
especially
do now.
considering how vile that character is in the book and what they do. Like, how far are they going to push it? I saw somebody tweeting online saying, because, this isn't a spoiler if you've seen Hannibal or read the book, but Hannibal convinces this pedophile to essentially cut his face off and feed.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
One of my favorite lines in any movie.
Someone was saying, like, how great would it be if that happens in the show, but he feeds it to Will's dogs?
Oh yeah,
Since
yeah,
Will has this
all
thing
those
with dogs or whatever, that'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah,
So who knows? We'll see. I'm totally excited about season 2.
Yeah, it seems like they'll only get better.
Yeah, now that they've kind of established their own mythology
Universe,
after the first season, now it's like anything goes.
Yeah, because the first 4 episodes weren't that easy to get through. That it was kind of like, oh yeah, this will be all right.
Yeah,
and
you're
then
trying
it
to figure
really
out.
started to go in its own direction.
One more plug, and this is also to you, Elric. Well, we were talking last week with Dave about Coldwater and how it was going to be part of the New Who Online Film Festival,
Which starts on probably the day you're listening to this.
February 7th.
I believe it's the Friday.
It's February 7th through the 28th.
Mm-hmm. His is on the 18th, I believe. Coldwater is playing on the 18th.
18th?
The
Yep.
schedule's now up on the site, and the battery, another
It's gonna
film
be
we've been
there? Cool.
is probably like 4 days into it. So the cool thing about it, this is something I didn't even know about much when I was picking the films, is that every filmmaker pretty much is going to do a Google Hangout where you can talk to them during the day or
that's
whatever.
cool.
Yeah. So Jeremy will be somewhere where people can just chat to them like live.
Oh, cool.
So, there's a lot of cool things. And they got Spike Lee to be the keynote speaker, and that's obviously a big deal for something that was put together with nothing. So it's, we'll see what happens.
What's the website so people know?
Yeah.
It's just newhofilmfestival.com, and they'll find, just look up New Ho Film Festival. But yeah, the whole schedule's up there. But they're the only 2 pure genre films. There's a couple darker dramas, but
Right.
we've been telling you guys, if you haven't seen Battery yet, then it's cheaper. It's only $199. So cheaper, undercut Jeremy,
Yeah.
and
As long
rip
as
him
you
off a
see
buck.
it. You know what's funny? When he was on our show earlier this year, and he said, he made a joke about if they release it somewhere in another country, I don't care what the cover is or what they call it or whatever. I actually saw him tweet a picture of the German DVD that's coming out.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
and
no.
They changed the title to Ben and Mickey versus the Zombies or something
wow.
like that. It's a
I think
really
I think I did
bizarre-
see that too.
It's a bizarre title, and I'm like, oh,
We'll post it.
Okay, yeah. I'll find that picture and we'll post it.
Well, and like in the future, if we end up talking to Kevin Tenney, maybe he'll tell us about how titles can be changed.
Right.
Anyway, it would be cool to find out from Kevin if certain titles could be
Maybe
changed.
later tonight.
Maybe later.
Okay, so let's go to movies we've seen. I've only seen one that I really wanted to talk about, and it was one that Rebekah lent to me, Nightbreed. We did the Clive Barker episode a few weeks ago.
I don't even have to say it now. I can just make it.
He's
got a gun.
He's so good.
I haven't seen Nightbreed since I was a kid. Like, I literally have not seen it all this time, which is why I wanted to borrow it from you. I didn't want to wait for the Cabal cut to come out or whatever. I wanted to watch the original theatrical. And you know what? I appreciate it a lot more now as an adult, and especially because when Anthony DeBlasi was on, he was saying, well, Clive wanted it to be like his version of Star Wars. And with that in mind, it was interesting to see like exactly what a rich, crazy world this was with all these different monsters. And it's funny because the thing that you were saying, Elric, about how they felt, Clive felt like the way it was cut was to make people more relate more to the humans.
Mm-hmm.
And that the monster, like the sympathy with the monsters got lost, but you as a kid seeing it never felt that. Me watching it now as an adult, I never felt that either.
Yeah.
I liked all the monsters and they were the good guys.
they really are.
Yeah,
no
that's
matter
how I
what.
thought.
I always enjoyed that.
That's how I felt as well, where they were always the good guys.
It really is
Yeah.
probably the richest single mythology created in the last 50 years of just
In
compared to
in
Universal.
horror.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like, had it kept going, just think about all these characters who you would have found out about.
Yeah.
I think it would have been really fast. The one guy who freaked me out, I thinking about this recently because, like, most of them, you're on their side, but the guy who cuts the guy in the hospital who has the things on his thumbs,
who takes his face
his
off,
skin, and he talks about something. I think he talks about genitalia at some point.
But
I can't remember.
He's kind of creepy anyway.
Yeah, he just freaks me out.
I mean, most
He's
of the
creepy.
monsters are like really nice guys, but he's just kind of
No, he's creepy. I can't
freaked
remember
out,
his name.
and then
but
he's like, he gets. I don't want to say rapey with the girl, but I
does.
remember
He
thinking
does
he
get a
was
little-
uncomfortable with
Yeah, yeah.
her.
He's a creepy
and
dude.
Yeah.
And then he's got like his scalp showing for the rest
Yeah.
of the movie. Whatever.
Yeah.
I like the porcupine girl.
she's
kinda-
really
She was
yeah,
always
she's hot.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked
totally
the moon
get
face
that.
guy.
Moonface guy. was
Yeah,
cool
he
too.
was great.
And again, I forgot about. I mean, obviously, because you always quote David Cronenberg,
Yeah.
but I did not remember his performance and kind of what a scuzzy.
Well, how
doctor
creepy is the
slash
scene where he
serial
goes
killer
into the
is.
family's house? I mean, that's freaking creepy.
Yeah.
There's like little kids and stuff, and he's like going into this house with a giant blade. That's like
and
a
he
scary.
murders his family
Yeah,
in front of
it's
this little
like-
kid. It's awful.
Who's the genre vet? Who's the actor who's in the scene where he goes and tortures the guy to find out where the monsters are? And the old guy, he is a. I remember watching it recently and thinking, oh, he's actually in all these old genre films, and that's
Hold
why he
on,
was put
I
in the
was
film.
just on
She
the
could-
page.
yeah, she could bring it up.
Anyway, I'm really glad you rewatched it.
Yeah,
'cause-
and you know what? This kind of opens up something that I wanted to talk about. Something that Ryan Turek actually just wrote an article on Shock to Drop, and I think the quotes were culled from the recent Fangoria issue. Scream Factory is officially doing. They're not releasing the Cabal cut, meaning. It's not going to be the Cabal cut. For those who don't know, was this like 3 hour or longer. I can't remember. It was a really long version that had everything in there because a lot of the elements were lost. So they were like culling from VHS sources and stuff like that. So the long, completely unedited raw version is the one they were touring as the Cabal cut. And Scream Factory acquired that, but now they've announced that it's going to be Clive Barker's Nightbreed, the director's cut. Meaning that they found even more footage and they are going to clean up as much as they can. They're going to edit it properly. Clive is going to supervise it. So it's going to be, I'm actually looking forward to that. Because
Me too.
Quality
Definitely.
wise, I wouldn't want something that dips in quality. I want the closest thing to Clive's original vision as possible. And that's what we're going to get.
Because we can't help the way we watch movies, and just, a VHS scene popping up in the middle of a movie is going to just take you out.
It's gonna
It doesn't matter
completely
how
pull
much
you
of a
out.
fan you are, it just takes you out.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a need for that. It would be cool for people to get to see all the footage. I'm all for that. And as an extra feature or whatever. But
Yeah, and they could include that stuff if they want to, but I'm stoked that it's going to be a director's cut.
Yeah.
And really briefly, since we just mentioned Scream Factory, I don't know if you caught it, but they've already started announcing a slew of titles they're putting out later this year. And the thing I'm excited about is, whereas last year, you'd hear things like Night of the Demons, Sleepaway Camp, stuff like that. It's all films I loved and grew up on. They've been announcing a ton of stuff that I've never seen, and some of that I've never heard of before.
Like what?
Okay, so Deadly Eyes I've never seen.
I've never seen that one either.
It's like a killer
Never heard
rat
of it.
movie.
No.
It's Deadly Eyes. It's a killer rat movie from 1982. The one they just announced is The Final Terror, also from 1983. I think it's a slasher film, but it's got Daryl Hannah, Adrian Samed, Rachel Ward, Joe Pantoliano. Actually, my friend Chris Garitano was always telling me about that one because that was a lost one that never came out. I don't even know if there was a VHS release of it. It definitely never came out on DVD.
Oh, wow.
But that one is coming out, Final Terror, Deadly Eyes. And then another one from 1985 I never heard of called Hellhole. It's got this really cool cover that looks like a hospital guy with a scalpel, and it stars Mary Warrenoff.
Oh, wow.
So they're like really dipping into the vaults of stuff that either hasn't ever been on DVD or very, very hard to find on VHS.
Jeff Nelson's hardcore.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know if I told you guys yet, but I did touch base with the guys from Scream Factory, and they've got a lot of big announcements, I think, coming up in May or so. So they've already told me that they would love to come in when they make their next big slew of announcements, specifically to talk to us about what's going on.
Oh,
there.
terrific.
So we'll have another Scream Factory episode coming soon. And it's always fun to have those guys.
Nice. I definitely checked out their Witchboard, their Night of the Demons, and Darkman all this week, which arrived
I
in my mail.
Darkman. I can't wait to get that one.
I'm pretty psyched. It was awesome.
Just quickly to follow up on our naked Nightbreed thing.
Our naked
the victim.
what?
I don't know.
Well, IMDb took like 20
what's on
minutes to
your mind?
load.
I think
That's
that
like
was
the
my
longest
brain
callback
was
ever.
thinking of Naked Lunch and David Cronenberg. John Agar is his name, the old actor, and the reason it came up recently in my mind is because he is the Dr. Lang in Body Bags, the eye segment. He's the one who because of but he's also in a ton of, like, I'm going back Miracle Mile and everything. So he's probably, if I go back, he's in Westerns, and probably the further I go back into his filmography, we'll find horror films back there. Journey to the Seventh Planet. So he's obviously Attack of the Puppet People.
I never considered him a genre guy.
The mole people. So things like, so Tarantula, all those kind of Revenge of the Creature.
Oh, okay.
So he's the professor in that. So it obviously was a direct reference to that stuff. Anyway.
Nice.
And if you haven't seen Body Bags yet, I still really think that was one of my favorite releases last year. I really had fun with that.
I never watched Body Bags when it originally came out, but I did watch the Scream Factory release, and I didn't enjoy the wraparound stuff with John Carpenter. It's a little awkward and clunky, but the stories themselves were great.
Really good. And because now we're getting anthologies like VHS and that, which are interesting to me on some levels because of the people they choose to make them, but again, they're all the same in the aesthetic. These are fun to watch because they're real little movies, and they're like quite long for a short anthology. There's only 3 of them. The first one shot by the first one is Carpenter, I believe, at the
gas station
one. Beautifully made. Like, it's such a simple story. It's not even funny. Like, it's not hardly even, it's almost a typical kind of joke, scary campfire tale. Oh, then she's left on a gas station. But it's shot like, up there with his real work, It's really good. That said, I thought The Ward was well directed. It wasn't a good movie, but I could still tell he could direct.
I enjoyed The Ward.
Yeah. And his directing was strong.
That was a weird one for me. I thought about putting that on my list for last week, where the script, there were parts of it that I thought that had been rehashed and overdone, and I'd seen them in other movies, and it's all the same person schizophrenia script, but I loved the shooting style.
I'll tell you guys now something.
It's good, but for me, it's the ending, and I don't want to spoil the ending, but it's one of those weird twist endings that once you know it makes you angry about.
Yeah.
I just said it like 30 seconds ago. I announced
Nobody needs to know that. That's
okay.
Twist.
But I'll tell you why I was I think this is why I'm so resistant to rewatching. What was the main one we argued about last week? Blair Witch.
Blair Witch
I'll tell you why.
Book of Shadows.
Because the last time I went back to a film that I knew I didn't like when I saw it, and I just flat out thought it was stupid. But a friend of mine, Elijah Drenner, and a couple other people had just kept saying how great it is, and you have to watch it again. And then I rewatched again, and it was even more boring and even stupider, and that's Ghost of Mars. Ghost of Mars to me is idiotic. And when when people come up to me and tell me they like that film, I think it's idiotic.
Here's the thing.
I just don't know why that exists.
I've only seen it once. I saw it when it came to video initially, and I kind of thought it was all right. I didn't hate it, and I didn't love it, but I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I have the Blu-ray. I've been waiting to revisit it, and it's going to happen soon.
It's pure frosting. There's no cake there. It's just frosting.
It's Rashomon done via Mars, but I think Ice Cube is where I can't take it seriously. Really? I think like Pam Grier walking around, I'm like, cool, all right. Then Natasha Henstridge, all right, sci-fi. And then as soon as I see Ice Cube in the thing, I'm just like, out of the movie. I don't know why. It's like suddenly it's right along.
Savage alien.
Maybe. But I was with Pam Grier, so I guess
that's true. Okay.
I just really thought it was dumb, but I mean, it's not that badly made. Again, it's still Carpenter knows how to make a movie. But people had convinced me to rewatch it, so I was kind of excited, and then I was like, eh.
Even, I don't know the history, but even he has a problem with. I mean, I don't know. He was I mean, that's why he didn't direct for like 10 years after that, because he had such a horrible time making that movie, all through post production and all. So I even think Carpenter doesn't want you to watch that movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
was the last time I got burned.
I never watch it going, wow, this is like art of horror. This is what horror makes horror great. Right. I watch it going, oh, that's funny. They took the guy's head off. I mean, it's very, it's.
Suddenly you're like a 20-year-old stoner. That
was
awesome. You're like, oh, dude.
Dude, they took his head off. No, but that's like the sense that you have to watch Ghost of Mars in. I can't watch it going, this is filmmaking.
I just don't think you should watch it. Why watch it at all?
Because it's got some fun moments in it.
I thought it was really unfun. Like one of those movies that's so not fun. Like it felt so boring and clunky. Like I think if it was funny and weird, I think I would have liked it. I'd found it not to be those things, except that they're on Mars. That's the only funny thing about it. It's like,
and Jason Statham with hair.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. He was in it. Yeah, I'm not a big Statham fan either. So there you go. I'm 0 for 2. Ice Cube and Statham. That's me out. I'd rather Seagal and
how can you
Kurt Russell.
Statham?
He's good in Crank. Crank 1 and 2 are good. Crank 2 is awesome.
Transport. He was great. I love the man.
All right. So did you guys see anything else before we tackle our topic?
What did I watch this week?
Witchboard.
I watched Witchboard.
We can get to that.
I went to Creature Features. I would like to say that. I went into the place,
the
Creature
store in
Features.
Burbank.
There's a store for anyone here. I had heard about it. It looked like a little, I thought it'd be just like Dark Dells, so I didn't think it was. But it's really like going to Monster Palooza.
It's like a museum.
It is. It's more like a museum. And I took my 2.5-year-old and he like was just in heaven, like loving running from thing to thing. But it's, I thought it was, I mean, like you said.
It's pricey.
It's pricey.
Yeah.
But
I can't afford anything in
I don't know
there.
if we're meant to be able to, I'm not sure what the purpose entirely is of the store in terms of financially, you know, but there's comics and there's stuff like that. But just like total heaven to look around.
Yeah, I took Sam Zimmerman from Fango was in town last week, and so we did what I called the Burbank Horror Tour, where we went to Dark Dell, we went to Creature Feature, we went to Halloween Town, and we went to the Bearded Lady Antique Shop, which specializes in like, you guys should go in there. They specialize in weird little kind of, you know, creepy antiques, I'll call it. And so we went in there as well. And, but we went to Creature Feature and both of us just spent a good hour in there just drooling over things that we can't have, but are absolutely fantastic just to look at. So.
The best thing in there, the thing I wanted most, I already have. And it was so frustrating because I have this Godzilla from like 75. It's the one in the background in Creepshow. Oh. When you watch Creepshow, you see it on the kids thing. And I got it in Australia and have never taken it from my sister's house. And now she's like, oh, I don't want to send it now. And then I'm looking at it, I'm going, this is the best thing in the entire place. And I already own it. It's so frustrating.
The thing that I wanted in there was also Godzilla related. It's this thing, it was a toy from the 80s called Eggzilla. And it was like this little timer where you had to push Godzilla down. It was like a little Godzilla and you pushed him down and then you had to construct an egg around him. And the egg would explode if you didn't get it done quick enough. And I used to have it when I was a kid. And it's one of those things, you know, like when I turned 10 and quit playing with it, my mom sold it at a yard sale. And now I'm like, man, I wish I still had my Eggzilla. And they have it in there. And it was just like, I saw it. And out of everything in the shop, I fixated on it. It was like Needful Things for me, where I was suddenly like, you know, it represented my youth and I need it back.
You could sell money for it, trade her for
it's only like $20, but I was still like $20 for a toy I used to have. I got to find a way to justify it, or you know.
Well, the Kyoto brothers were there too when I was there. That
really?
enhanced the whole thing. I was like,
I bumped into David Scow when I was there.
Yeah,
and actually they sell a lot of soundtracks on CD. They got a lot of rare stuff, which Dark Dells has a lot of interesting soundtracks on CD as well.
I just dropped off a whole bunch of copies of Fango and Gorzan, so they're going to be selling that now.
That's where Creature
Feature.
And you know what you got to add to your Burbank tour is Hyena Gallery.
Hyena Gallery, I know. It's not walking. It's not like the walking loop of Magnolia Park. I'd have to drive, but it's still awesome.
But I still have to bring you two there.
I've never been there.
You guys in the audience should go as well.
But I will say, before we get off things that we did this week, I haven't watched this yet. I spent my whole day running around from meeting to meeting. Like I had Studio City. I was at Jump Cut for a while, and then I was over in the Hollywood for a while, and then I was in almost at Santa Monica for a while. So I've been out all day.
You didn't make 2 hours to watch a movie?
I know. But I picked this up at Amoeba because I had like a half an hour break and didn't know what to do. It's a Pang Brothers film called Recycle, and it looks so hallucinogenic and so batshit. And apparently it's been out for a while, but I'm really excited about it. So I still had it with me because I haven't been home yet. So I brought it for you guys to look at.
Pretty out there.
Does that not look crazy? It's Pang Brothers. They're the guys who did The Eye. So I'm pretty psyched to see that one.
Cool.
Well,
it was at Cannes. Official selection at Cannes.
So yeah, so apparently it's been out for a year or two, but I
remember seeing this over there when I worked at Amoeba.
I picked it up for $9.99.
Sweet.
Yeah.
You'll have to let us know how it is next week.
Yeah, so I'll be reporting on that next week.
We were thinking of a topic, and the reason we knew we were going to be talking to Kevin and Night of the Demons, Angela is like one of the one of the most iconic villainous horror characters, especially of the 80s.
Yeah.
So I was also thinking it timed very well because this week, probably the day you're going to be listening to this, Nurse 3D will be coming out, which is really another one of those subgenres, single white female, fatal attraction, all these kind of obsessive, crazy woman doing things to you.
And Nurse 3D has been getting great reviews.
Yeah, people are enjoying themselves, and that's really cool.
Okay, let's define great. Yeah. It's been getting, people have been enjoying themselves,
it's exactly what you think it is from the trailer. If you know, I think Ryan wrote in his review that if Ryan Tarek was like, if you don't like the trailer, you're not going to like the movie.
And I read one review that said if the lead actress whose name's escaping me, thank you, Paz de la Huerta, that if she had actually done like a really good performance, the movie would not have been good.
Well, I don't even know if she's a bad performer. I think that's just who she is. Like that's how she talks. That's how she acts.
Because she. I mean, if you watch her in the trailer, she looks like she's way bad.
Oh, really?
Worse than usual. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I like
she
her.
was on like Boardwalk Empire or something.
Yeah, she's good.
She was good on Boardwalk Empire.
She is not
she is not
Enter
good
the Void. I swear,
I've
this is
seen
a
from
true story. I
hers.
was walking down the street, like last time I was in New York. I don't remember when it was, maybe 3 years ago. And I'm walking down the street, and I always kind of had a thing for her. I thought she was really hot. If she's had a baby, this was her. I don't know if she has in real life, but I saw a pregnant-ish woman who, just 99% of it was her, walking down the street, talking to herself like a fucking lunatic. Like walking down the street, like yelling at themselves. There was no phone in their hand, like talking. And I remember looking across the road going, yeah, crazy ladies. I love those crazy ladies. But yeah, it really stuck with me. But, she does come off as a little
Elric
little
was
crazy.
even more turned on.
I was.
Pregnant and crazy.
That's like my MO. Me
Hey
and
now.
Kerouac. So we
Female
wanted
villains.
So and I know peek behind the curtain. We may or may not have already just taped with Kevin Tenney. So we're going to keep this kind of brevity.
Don't
I like people like
shatter
to
the
peek
illusion.
behind the curtain. I peek behind the curtain. But so we'll just throw out a lot of titles and things that we dig. And I mean, I think a lot of it starts with when I was thinking about things Medusa. You like classic and Creed. One thing that I noticed thinking about this is that unfortunately I feel like because so many of the iconic ones are men, the Freddys, the Jason, you go back and you find that too many of the kind of classic woman villains are just crazy. What you'd say, quote unquote, crazy bitches, and that's kind of dull. Like it's starting with majorly with Fatal Attraction, all the spinoffs that came from that.
Yeah.
These people who are basically trying to entrap a man or boil his rabbit and stuff, and then not enough creatures, not enough like full blown.
We're sticking to. We're not just sticking to 80s then, because I tried to keep it
No,
in that
because
period.
I honestly,
but I was just thinking.
I went way back.
All right,
Okay.
well then I got you. Then I got you covered.
Okay, well he's got the 80s one.
Creatures.
We can jump around, but I was just thinking for me, like I think back to like how Medusa, you see that at a young age, and like it's such a fantastic creature. And
still my
thing in
favorite
mythology.
moment of the original Clash of the Titans is the
totally.
Medusa scene, and my favorite part of the remake version of it too. It's
Jason
just
and
that
the
character.
Argonauts as well.
Yeah.
That was my favorite scene there.
But let's just fire around. I mean, I said to you before we even started, when I thought of even this topic, the first thing I said to you, I was like, for me, Julia Cotton.
I will correct myself. Not Jason and the Argonauts, Hercules.
Okay, Hercules. Julia Cotton, Claire Higgins in Hellraiser 1 and 2 is
Right there. It's on my list.
Is probably, and what I say, here's the difference. We all love horror films because they're fun and because we enjoy them. So a lot of these things we will say didn't scare us or don't unnerve us. They just are cool villains or cool monsters.
Right.
She's one of the only in the history of films who her performance actually kind of chills me in both movies as a man. The way, the iciness of her eyes, the coolness of everything she does, the actions with which she kills the person in the first one, and then the thing she becomes in the second, coming from this bed of blood, and she's just by then she's like sold to the devil. I find her to truly be one of the greatest villains of any kind. And what's so cool is she becomes a monster. So you have a first movie where she's not a monster, she just acts like one in the second. So I feel like that's not many people get that great, that time to develop into something. So that's for me like way up the top.
She's on my list too, and I don't find her scary in the first one.
I don't either. She's just a bitch in the first one.
Well, you find her a bitch. I find her strangely attractive in the first one
because she's so strict and stern.
Because she looked like Sissy Spacek from The Shining.
You guys have this like wounded female fetish going on.
Oh, I do. I just like to rub it into.
I find her creepy, and I don't want to go home with her.
No, I mean, but there's something odd about. I mean, just the sexuality of that first movie in general.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Like the whole. I mean, because when I'm an impressionable kid and you don't really understand the concept of like cheating and all that stuff, and it's like she's having an affair with the brother on her wedding dress. It's just like there's just something dirty about it. And you're like, ooh, am I titillated or am I shocked? I don't know what I am. So I found her more like this. Like it was just like there's some sort of weird attraction.
You're right though. There is a sexiness to that scene, whereas all the stuff around it, she's never sexy. She's just prudish and annoying because she has no feelings towards the man she's with.
Exactly.
But you're right. That flashback creates something that's very hard to do, I think, in films.
Yeah.
They create that impulse. It feels like it's happening right before you. That attraction.
Exactly. And then by the second one, exactly as you said, like that, I think in the second one, she's a great horror villain because she's, skinless and she looks like a monster.
Yeah.
Like she's become what scared us in the first movie. She's one of the great
Isn't it
ones.
amazing to think that there's like how many great villains between those two movies?
Yeah.
Fucking, you got the Cenobites, you got Pinhead, then you have Dr. Chenard, you have her,
Frank.
you have Frank the human.
Even today when Elric and I were talking, he was like, my favorite female villains from Hellraiser.
Yeah.
And I immediately said, you mean Barbie Wilde? Who's the female Cenobite? And he was like, no, I mean the other girl,
Claire,
Julia.
yeah.
So
it's just weird. It's just funny what sticks with you. But I think being a young guy and thinking, oh, it'd be cool to go home with the girl, and then seeing what happens when you go home with her, you go, oh, I guess not.
Yeah.
I guess that's a mistake. But yeah, let's jump around with, there's so many.
For me, I know it's obvious, but since we have Angela from Night of the Demons, I got to go with Angela from Sleepaway Camp.
That's right. I know you're a fan.
Yeah, you're a fan.
I love all those movies, and it's weird because I think one of the criteria, it doesn't apply to all the ones I picked, but part of it is if they're in multiple films, it's a little bit easier to say, well, that was an iconic villain because you got to see them more than once. Like Julia, for example. But with Angela, it's, in the first movie, you're not even sure. She's not a fully developed quote unquote killer. Yeah. I mean, there's somebody killing and they kind of play it as a murder mystery. But if you've seen the franchise, you know that she's the killer. I think it's more interesting in 2 and 3, which take this radical different direction, where she's played by Pamela Springsteen, Bruce Springsteen's little sister, where she plays it as kind of a Freddy Krueger type, like very comedic and very prudish and kind of like with this moral center. Anytime anybody does something wrong at the camp, she kills them, and she's very vocal telling them, well, you're just a naughty, whatever. I don't remember the dialogue. It's been a long time, but kind of like chastising them for their sins, which is in essence just being a teenager. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just, having sex and doing drugs and all that stuff. So I always thought she was an interesting, fun, and kind of lonely and sad villain at the same time too. So I go with Angela.
I've never seen any of the sequels. I saw the first one.
Really? All right, we should
just never. I like the first one. Don't love it. Great ending.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of
come this summer. We should marathon all those movies.
I definitely liked the second one better than the first one when I first watched it, because I watched them when I was younger, and the first one I didn't really get the ending too much when I was a kid. I did, of course, later, but when I was young, it didn't really register much with me. But the whole gender switching thing kind of I missed it.
Yeah.
But I loved the second one because it was much more self-aware, and she was happy, and you knew she was doing the killings from the beginning, and I liked that element.
Yeah, 2 and 3 are
so different actress.
Different actress. 2 and 3 were made simultaneously or about the same time.
Is it Felicia Rose? Does she come back?
No.
She's not in the second one.
Does she ever come back?
She's in the third.
The fourth. Return to Sleepaway Camp.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is the one, or is it the third? What's the one where it's like she's singing, she comes back as a camp counselor? 2. That is 2. Okay, that's the one.
2 and 3.
Throwing pens.
Yeah.
That's the one I really liked.
3 uses a lot of some footage from 2. Because again, they were made simultaneously, and I think they take place like within the same year. Like it's like the next year, and she's at another camp or whatever. So those 2 kind of have their own like mini universe, as opposed to the first one and fourth one.
If anything in the future happens awkwardly with gum, I want you to know it's Becca's fault. That's my time travel moment of the day.
I'm just putting my gum everywhere, throwing it places, flicking it at Elric. So.
Stick with the show.
My list, Asami from Audition.
Yeah, that was top. That's really high on mine too.
Yeah, and
great character, so quiet. You have no idea where that's going, that film. The first time you see that film, it's magic. It's
when she's on the phone with him and you see something kind of roll into camera.
So good.
Just jaw-dropping.
Because he's the creep
time.
the first half. Because, he's casting his wife based on auditions. It's pretty
and he's looking for somebody who's really submissive and quiet and demure.
Yeah.
And
So he kind of deserves it.
I would think so. I put down Jessica Lange from American Horror Story this past season. I love her just because she's so villainous and she's such a bitch, but she's just so hypersexual at the same time. And I loved her this season because you actually at times kind of understand and side with her. Yeah, and then other times you just can't stand her. So.
Yeah, no, she was good. I mean, there's so many. I mean, obviously we're not going to have time, but you were sticking all to the 80s, which is good. I think that probably was the original plan. But no, I think it got a little lost in the translation.
I'll shoot my last few out then. Pamela Voorhees, obviously. Betsy Palmer from Friday the 13th. The kind of one of the first of the slashers series would be Friday the 13th, right? And Pamela.
One of mine go way back. It's the original slasher. Original. This is one of my deep cuts. So from 1932... I have the film that I consider the original slasher film, which is 13 Women. And
I think you mentioned it before.
Yeah, it's got Peggy, why can't I remember her name? The woman who threw herself off the Hollywood sign.
Peggy Entwistle.
Thank you, Peggy Entwistle. That's what it kind of became known for, was that it was her only film. But I love it because it is like the original slasher. It's about all of these women who go to a boarding school and they make fun of one girl because she's not American. So you kind of get like, it's a little racist. It was the 30s. That was acceptable, I guess. And
is that called xenophobia?
Yeah, I think it is. Well, in it, she's not.
I think
she's not like truly foreign. I think they refer to her as like mixed in the film. But she's described as that, and so she's given this kind of mystical persona. But she's made fun of, and then it fast forwards to like their school reunion, and they're one by one being killed off. And it's such a cool little film. Warner just did a re-release of it through Warner Archives. I think it was last year. And it's one that like no one's ever heard of, but if I think of my favorite female villain, I love her.
So many of them, they kind of fit into when we're talking about the psycho woman, that obviously is like at its high point with Kathy Bates, obviously.
Yeah, I have that one down on my list.
But then down that line, I mean, we have Jennifer Jason Leigh in Single White Female, Fatal Attraction, Glenn Close. One of the ones that doesn't get enough and nearly enough is whoever plays Evelyn in Play Misty for Me, Clint Eastwood's movie.
Oh, that is also Jessica Lange, isn't it?
I don't think it is.
No.
But it's scary because they're so real, and they play people who just are wounded, but then really, turn on you, and you can't get rid of them. If you want, I guess this is a deep cut, but a classic movie that's not a horror film, but it's scary. There's a film out there, Gene Tierney from Laura.
Oh, Jessica Walter. Sorry, Jessica Walter plays it. Evelyn in Play Misty for Me.
Gene Tierney, who's one of my favorite actresses, she was in a film called Leave Her to Heaven. Vincent Price has a small role. It's one of the most best-looking films you'll ever see. It's a drama, but she's so cold, and she does commit murder, like these two deaths. It's terrifying because she's so beautiful and yet just so cold, trying to get what she wants. And I think some of that, there's a long history of those, starting, from even what Rebekah's saying with that deep cut. It's like, it's interesting. And a lot of it's probably because men as storytellers have been writing stories about crazy women, throughout the ages. But I definitely don't prefer those. I really prefer the ones where we have creatures. The next on my list would be two different, pretty much any female in any Cronenberg film, but Marilyn Chambers and Rabbit's really interesting, but even more, the one that really unnerves me is Samantha Eggar in The Brood. I find that, see, these aren't my favorite, like I want to hang out with these are people that actually unnerve me. Yeah. That unnerves me. Holding up her naked body with these weird sores and fetuses growing from her, that's a terrifying image to me. And because it's all about divorce and it's all very, it's just so intense, the family stuff. So those kind of ones are more, that borderline more towards we're turning into creatures, are the ones that, for whatever, and then the other trope besides the psycho woman we have is the sexy succubus, the Catherine Deneuve and Delphine Seyrig and Daughters of Darkness, Catherine Deneuve in The Hunger, Species, Natasha Henstridge in Species. They're all there to so you want them, but then they drain you of life or whatever it is. The Guardian's really interesting. William Friedkin's film. I don't remember. Was she a tree nymph or wood nymph? She's like making love to a tree at one point.
I haven't seen that.
It's like Hand That Rocks the Cradles, but with a tree having sex with her. I mean, so that's another trope, but they're not necessarily scary. They're sexy. Right. It's just interesting that there doesn't seem. It seems like it's easier to put in like very strict categories. The sexy one.
None of mine fall into those.
Really? Well, that's good. Well, no, my favorites don't either. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, my favorites definitely don't.
So what else do you have? Rattle off some of yours.
Lola from The Loved Ones.
Yeah, she was a good.
Oh yeah, great.
She was fun.
I absolutely love that character. If you haven't seen The Loved Ones, it didn't quite get the release it deserved by any means. But if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. It was one of my favorite films from 2009 and last year when it finally got a release.
Unrated edition if you can. It's not on Blu-ray, unfortunately.
One of the best looking, I'd say. I mean, she's iconic, almost like Angela, probably because of the circuit.
Which Angela?
Angela from Night of the Demons.
Okay.
Greta. As in Demons is definitely one of the most iconic, fierce, amazing looking creatures.
Yeah,
just amazing because the actress obviously looked amazing anyway, and then you add this incredible. So I really like that. But here's my favorite, and this is weird because I haven't seen this movie, and this one I've been waiting to talk about this movie since we started the show. But this is the perfect time to talk about it because it's a great creature. I shouldn't watch it again because I have a feeling it's a shit movie, I'm going to guess. But as a kid, I loved it. The Unnamable, the Lovecraft film, that creature, it's a woman. The Unnamable is basically about, there's a woman at one point in the 1880s, I guess, who gives birth to a child that is so monstrous that has to be hidden away in a cellar. And then it cuts to now. And these kids are like, hey, we should go down to see the cellar. And then they go down and suddenly this thing called the Unnamable. It was so hideous. They called it the Unnamable. And she is such a great, even if you just go to YouTube and watch the cover of the clip, the makeup is so good. And this creature just is so like feral and just kind of, it looks like she could easily go into Nightbreed world. You know?
Right.
But I remember loving that film. I probably watched that. There's another one called The Unholy. Do you remember that film with the priest?
I liked The Unholy.
Those two I watched a lot when I was young. I don't know why.
I know these titles. I've never seen these movies though.
But Unnamable, I have no idea if it's available. But that when we were talking about females, I was like, I wish there was just more of that, like where they're just, different kind of creatures. Or like you said, like Lola, where their motivations are more interesting rather than just, oh, you score me, now I'm going to make your life hell and I'm crazy.
Yeah, like I have Baby Jane on here.
Yeah,
and
of course,
I love
one of the
her because
best
she
roles
has
ever.
Such more interesting motives than just, I'm jealous of a man being stolen away from me or something like that. I loved Baby Jane. And when I was doing this, I realized that I apparently have a thing with elderly women because one of the big ones from my youth, and again, if I probably went back and watched this film, I probably would find out, that it's not as good as I remember it. But I used to love The Flowers in the Attic from 1987. And the grandmother in that, who I'm relatively sure was played by the same woman as Nurse Ratched.
Louise Fletcher, I think it is.
Yeah, I think they're the same woman. But yeah.
Movie trivia. Bring it, guys. Bring your super team.
Bring it. And for some reason, just the grandmother in that, and I don't even think, okay, maybe she does kill the kid. I was going to say she doesn't actually do anything, but she whips them, she kills the kid. It's pretty intense, but I remember being a kid watching it, just being, she was the most fearful creature I could imagine. Along the same lines as Baby Jane, just disturbed the hell out of me. So.
Speaking of great mothers, the mother from Brain Dead or Dead Alive.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that thing gets outrageous. I remember as a kid watching that movie going, oh, this is great. Loving that movie. And then as soon as she became the giant puppet thing, I just couldn't even believe what I was watching. I was just like, for me, it did jump the shark as a kid. Now I look back and think how awesome that is. But at the time, I remember going, what just happened? Like there is a 200-foot puppet with giant saggy breasts now eating everyone. Like it really kind of fucking blew my mind. But she's an interesting character.
It's called Dead Alive, by the way.
It's Dead Alive. We call it Dead Alive here, son.
Well, we'll talk.
This is an ongoing joke.
We may or may not talk to Kevin Tenney in the future about that.
Who also has a Brain Dead movie.
This is a weird one for me that I couldn't believe popped into my mind when we said female villains. The Woods, 2006.
I remember the film.
Lucky
Who's the
McKee
villain?
film. The head witch. It's played by Patricia Clarkson.
That's right. Yeah.
And she just shocked me because she was so refined and calm and relax through the entire thing. And for some reason, I just loved her performance. I can't even, I was great with the movie for some reason. I liked it when nobody else did.
I love The Woods.
It had Agnes Bruckner as the lead and everything.
Yeah.
That's another one that I would say if you haven't seen it.
Well, also
it
was like Suspiria without the colorful cinematography
and the weird
it's
ballet witches. I mean, the witches. I think that's why I liked it. Patricia Clarkson plays the head witch in it, but it's much more subtle. It's not the soundtrack screaming witch at you, or weird creepy people creeping around in the dark, making her drink blood and twigs and things like that.
I love that stuff.
Okay,
I love Suspiria. but I agree with you. It was cool. The Woods.
And there is some
Bruce Campbell.
twigs in this one. I forgot that. So, but yeah, it definitely does have a lot of Suspiria references to
Do you know
it.
what I remember about The Woods, other than Bruce Campbell, is the big legal battle between the team that made that movie and M. Night Shyamalan, because the name of the village was originally The Woods.
Yes, and they had to change the name.
Shyamalan had to change it because they
were first.
Got The Woods.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So there's a case of someone suing somebody over a name.
Maybe we'll talk about it in the future.
We'll talk about that.
I also wrote down May was always one of my faves.
Yeah, I thought about that. I was wondering, it's tough because is May a villain?
She's not portrayed as such in the movie, but she's a monster.
So maybe you can go, we don't need it. It could be
in the
villains,
same way that you
monsters, whatever.
sympathize with Frankenstein.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a monster. Okay.
And like Ginger Snaps, I always kind of sympathized with the girl.
I love
Ginger
her.
Snaps.
I think she's great.
Yeah.
I think that character in Ginger Snaps is so fun. And you're right. Exactly. She's your lead protagonist. She's one of the two sisters. But again, you kind of feel like they deserve it.
You
when
understand.
She starts turning.
You're like, of course they're going to turn.
Which I guess is the key.
Guys deserve it.
The creepiest in the last few years to me, the creepiest revelation, like you said about Sleepaway Camp, was Esther and the Orphan.
Yeah.
That I remember being pretty
good twist.
Good performance and a really good twist. And the acting was all top notch in that film. It felt very real,
Yeah, it's a good one.
I know you guys aren't quite as huge as Buffy fans as I did, but as I am, but I always loved the character of Drusilla in Buffy just because she was completely crazy. There was like nothing there.
Who played her?
So I don't even remember. I know that she was supposed, I should know this. She was supposed to be very much like Nancy, because she was, you know, it was supposed to be like a Sid and Nancy between her and Spike because they were
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
And so she comes across
British girl.
this very kind of, she's British, but she's just batshit crazy throughout the whole thing. I should know this. I will know.
I
by
remember
next time.
Charisma Carpenter. Every time she's on screen, that's all I can remember.
Really?
I get amnesia around everything
She
except
was
Charisma
much
Carpenter.
more an angel than in Buffy.
That's why I followed that show more.
My last one is Mary Lou Maloney, who was the villain of Prom Night 2, aka Hello Mary Lou,
Which
Prom
I
Night
love.
2.
Oh,
And
such a fun
the character
film.
was in Prom Night 3 as well. That's interesting. I was always fascinated by the Prom Night series because Prom Night is just a slasher movie with Jamie Lee Curtis with a killer with a ski mask. And not
even a very good one, really. Like, it's not a great one. It's kind of boring. It's kind of like...
It's kind of okay.
Am I going to totally buy that Synapse Blu-ray they're putting out?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
But because I'm a completist. But it's not very good.
Yeah.
Yet, Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2 is actually kind of a sequel to Carrie.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more self-aware.
It's a surreal movie.
I mean, that was around the time of the Nightmare on Elm Street movie. So Prom Night 2 was intended to be... the backstory is Mary Lou, got killed at the prom or whatever, and freaked out. Now her spirit comes back, and there's all this like nightmare imagery because of that.
Principal My Girl Ironside.
And Drusilla was played by Juliette Landau. That
okay.
doesn't
That
tell
makes
me
sense.
anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I know who she is. But so Mary Lou, she was played by Lisa Sharridge in Prom Night 2. I will say though, the girl that played her in the third one, Courtney Taylor, is probably the hottest of the Mary Lou's. She's one of the hottest villains ever.
3 looked terrible, though. I never watched 3.
I didn't like 3 because it was too self-aware.
Yeah,
it went too
3
far.
is a flat-out comedy. It's awful in that sense. It's a comedy. I mean, 2 at least tried to do some invented kills and be somewhat scary, even though there's some humor to it. But 3 is a flat-out comedy. All I remember is at one point, Mary Lou picks up 2 ice cream cones and stabs someone through the hands with them. With ice cream cones.
That's cool.
No, it's not.
Why not?
Because they're
it's
mushy.
Ice cream cones.
They don't go through hands.
Stab
Are
someone
they
through the
steel?
hand with it.
No, but they're steel tipped, right?
No.
Oh.
But
Well,
maybe
you
they're
left that part
really-
out. You
No,
should
I
have said
didn't.
they
Ice
aren't
cream
steel
cones.
tipped
Really,
ice cream
really
cones.
frozen.
Really frozen solid.
All right. Well,
But she's super hot, so that's all that matters.
so she killed you with hotness.
My last one that I will
Yes.
give is one that I don't think has ever made it to the States. But if you can hunt it down, I highly recommend it. It is from 1968, Tower of Screaming Virgins. And I think it may have done like a limited run VHS release here, but it never made it to DVD. And it is German. But the reason that I love it, in the Tower of Screaming Virgins, the virgins that are screaming are men, which I think is really inventive for the time. It's about a queen and her kind of countesses who decide to, every night they throw a party in the tower and they have sex with these men and then they kill them. And it's just kind of their thing, and the villagers start catching on to what's going on. But in it, it's done very queen-like, and it's a really cool perception. And it's almost like an Errol Flynn swashbuckler at the same time, because then guys show up and try to kill the queen, but she has guards, and it's a weird little pick that I highly recommend.
Cool.
If you can find it, check it out.
Quickly, Gozer from Ghostbusters. Of course.
Great one.
Great costume.
Gozer.
I mean, her costume's amazing. Regine from Fright Night 2. Everyone knows my love for her now. And the funniest thing about that film, anytime I tweet about Fright Night 2, somebody with the Twitter account of Regine whatever will retweet or
that's
say
great.
something
It's
funny,
like a bot.
just like the RoboCop one who says, I'll buy that for $1. But my last one, I would throw this out there, is because it is just so, it's not a good movie and it's not a great role, but Sybil Danning as Sturba in Howling 2 is just so crazy when she turns into the wolf. So it's got its camp value with her lines and her nudity, but when she actually is this crazy wolf queen with glowing eyes and the craziest costume you've ever seen, it's pretty amazing. Like, so it's worth it watching for those moments. But I do think it's interesting looking at like why the main ones, the Holy Trinity, why the biggest ones are men, is I assume is because usually the protagonist is a female, the final girl. If the final girl is running away, maybe it's been designed to be from a male, character, and that's why maybe we have less female monsters and main villains. And because men have been writing the script for 90 years.
Which is unusual, because if you look back, I wrote about this before in articles. If you look back throughout mythology, especially if you're looking at Greek mythology or even Christian mythology, it's always that the villains are females. Because they're always,
it goes back to Eve.
It goes all the way back to Lilith. And I mean, it's weird that we kind of shifted that and said, oh no, victims are always females and the monsters have to be men. And I read, I don't even remember which book this was from, but there was a film theorist who said that that's when we will have true equality, when there are just as many female villains in horror films as there are men. Then that's a sign that we've reached true equality. I don't know if that's true or not, but
yeah, no, I mean, I think it's, it's probably also structural. Like when somebody's writing their story and they're like, well, we want to look at a girl running through the woods, so it's better to have it to be a man running after her.
It's a marketing move.
Yeah, exactly. But it is interesting, and I do think it changes, and there were waves after Fatal Attraction for sure, and that wasn't necessarily progressive either, though, right? Like Fatal Attraction was kind of a weird, because what was that terrible in Disclosure with Demi Moore? Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, he had sex with me, but he didn't, and I'm his boss, and you're like, wait a minute, I think this opens up a weird can of worms.
Well, a lot of them do, because a lot of the female films, when you see female villains, it's still kind of like, well, we have to make them somewhat, likable. Because if you look at something like Carrie is the villain, but she's also the one that you side with because, everybody's mean to her.
I can't see her as the villain of that film. I think her mother's the villain.
The mother
okay,
Piper
Margaret White, I will say.
Piper Laurie. I definitely can. Carrie to me is just pure victim, and everything else she can't help.
Yeah.
That's how it feels when I watch it,
And I think that's how a lot of females are portrayed in horror films, that it just, instead of becoming, I'm evil and I'm going to kill you, it becomes, I'm a victim of circumstance first to do these things, like May or Ginger Snaps.
That's probably why Gozer's so cool, because Gozer's like this totally empowered woman. She's just like, I'm a god. I'm going to just fuck some shit up. But no, it's interesting. I'll be curious to see if maybe this will change. And at some point, I mean, I guess Insidious 2 has a key female kind of ghost, and a lot of ghost stories have been Woman in Black recently,
especially in Japanese.
Right, totally.
You see in the Japanese films, you see the female with the long hair, and that actually has a technical term in Japanese society, which I should know.
Right.
Where that particular the long-haired ghost is like a reoccurring character that they have in a lot of their mythology and even modern day stories.
Yeah, it's interesting. Write us ones that you guys found interesting that we haven't talked about, because hopefully one day we'll have a good guest who's one of those people we've named, and we'll talk about this again. Yeah. But first, we also have, speaking of Angela, an iconic Night of the Demons character. Do we have someone interesting on the show? Cut and paste here.
I think Kevin Tenney.
Yes. Let us break to go grab Kevin Tenney and bring him in the room.
Okay. We're recording it again.
Here we go.
We're going to go get it again. Bye-bye.
Here we go.
Okay.
Okay, so we're back. We were just talking about our topic of the week, our favorite female villains from particularly the 80s era, in honor of the release of Night of the Demons, Angela.
And we strayed a little bit from the 80s. We went kind of all over the place.
I kind of went batshit crazy, guys.
There was, we threw in a couple 50s, some 70s.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, we did.
Fair. Some of mine are really international and obscure. I've got some German 60s in there.
There was that German one.
German 60s.
Back to the show. But
Rob's suffering from dementia.
At my age. But we have a very special guest joining us now. Speaking of Night of the Demons, the director of Night of the Demons and Witchboard and Braindead.
And Witchboard 2.
And Witchboard 2. Kevin Tenney, welcome to Killer POV.
Thank you, guys. Well, I'm glad to be here.
Yes, and obviously we're celebrating the release of 2 of your films on Blu-ray this week, which is kind of amazing. That's kind of got to be weird for you, right? That especially Night of the Demons, because I feel like every couple of years there's like a little push or all of a sudden people start talking about it again. But to get 2 of them getting the Blu-ray treatment, I mean, did you ever think your first 2 movies would keep coming back like this?
No, it's funny. I get comments from fans all the time. Why didn't you guys do a soundtrack CD? Mm-hmm. And it's like,
why didn't you?
It never occurred to us anyone would want one. I mean, we made Witchboard. We didn't put any kind of ad campaign or publicity in Variety or Hollywood Reporter because we didn't know any better. So by the time we had made the film, and we did it outside the Hollywood mainstream, even...
So it was an indie film.
Oh, 100%.
It was your first film, right?
Yeah, I left film school 4 units short of my degree to go direct it.
Did you ever consider going back for those 4 units?
Nah.
Done.
The only reason I wanted the degree is to become a director, so it would kind of been backtracking at that point. But we made it completely indie, and by completely, I mean, not even through Roger Corman or Charlie Band. I mean, nobody...
And yet it has a look of that studio 80s horror, which is a great compliment to you guys.
Thank you. But one of the things I had said when we decided to do it, I said 3 things that make low-budget films look low-budget are bad acting, bad camera and lighting, and bad sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if I can't do all the fancy camera work I would like to in order to give everyone else time to light it and get the boom shadow out of the way and all that, then that's what we'll do, because ultimately that's what'll make it look more like a professional movie. And that's what we did. And then I just, I saved the fancy cameras for the Spirit POVs. And then we just worked those out in advance, how we were going to deal with sound and light and all when the camera was moving around with a lens that showed the whole world.
Did Scream Factory approach you to put them both out at the same time, or did this kind of happen over, like, what was the process of being approached to do something like that?
Well, they both reverted back to the original production company after years being owned by MGM or Orion or whoever owned them. They reverted back about 7 years ago, I guess, which is when they made their first deal. Blue Rider Pictures made the first deal for the DVD release through Anchor Bay.
Right.
So that was a limited deal. It was over, and they figured, they knew people had, now that Blu-ray was becoming the new venue, that there would be interest. So they put it out that they were available, and they got offers from, several distributors and ended up choosing Scream Factory based on their track record with other films of this sort.
Yeah, you're shoulder to shoulder with all of Carpenter's work and people.
Right,
It's pretty remarkable.
Good company. Yeah.
It is
Criterion
becoming.
of horror.
Yeah, it is. It's becoming. You look at all the covers, and they're all films you'd like to watch again or have fond memories of, which is cool.
I get so excited when I get mail from them now because it's just something else I get to watch. It's like Christmas every day.
Yeah, and their announcements keep surprising you too. They keep choosing interesting things.
I jokingly said the last time they just announced a bunch of titles, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to get a second and third job just to keep up with buying all these Scream Factory titles. They keep coming.
Now this one, I remember when we had Jeff initially, there was the controversy that they got about the cover
for Night of the Demons.
For Night of the Demons, I'm holding it. That's right. But I don't know if the controversy. I didn't really understand what. I assume it was because Linnea was front and center, not Angela.
Well, that was. I mean, look, the way that Jeff explained it to us, they go out of their way. Jeff Nelson
from Scream Factory.
Right. Yes.
When it comes to this artwork, they try their best to commission an artist that will do an image that kind of sums up the whole movie.
Right.
So when they put this out, I saw it and I was like, oh, that's freaking cool.
Yeah, a lot of fans thought that.
Ton of fans. Why is Angela not front and center?
They want the original picture of her holding the invite that was on the
A lot of them were okay.
Yeah.
A lot of them were okay with this artwork. They just thought Linnea shouldn't be front and center because Angela's the bad guy.
Yeah.
Right.
That is like, for them, it's like you put Freddy off to the side or something, But you got to remember, in the first film, like in the first Nightmare on Elm Street, there was a heroine who was the star. And in that case, it's actually Kathy Podwell, who's very tiny down there.
Right.
She's the star of this film, and then Angela became the villain who then became the star of the franchise.
And
Which
Brian
I'm sure
Trenchard Smith will be here soon to answer those questions.
Yes.
Why don't we go back and start with Witchboard?
Actually, I like Brian's.
Brian, in general, as a filmmaker, I think he has a very good sense of humor.
I thought part 2 was great, and I can say that because I wasn't involved in any way, shape, or form. Yeah.
And was that by choice back then? Did you?
Well, they were making it at the same time I was making Witchboard 2.
I think you made the right choice. I might be in the minority here, being a big Witchboard 2 fan, but we'll go back to Witchboard.
Yeah, because Witchboard, I got to say, was one of my favorite films when I was a kid. I definitely watched it in repetition at way too young an age, I have to say. And what type of release did it originally get? Because you said it was totally indie, and if you're apart from everybody, that always kind of puts you in a different vote when it comes to distribution.
Yeah, well, we got a lot of offers. I mean, MGM wanted to pick us up, but they wouldn't guarantee us a theatrical, and we really wanted one. So we went with a small company that no longer exists called Cinema Group, and they put us into 1,100 theaters. We opened as the number 5. We were on the list of films that were, box office.
Such a different time, right?
Yeah.
Like where these little outside the box films could.
I kind of got in on the last of that where these guys could actually get treated. And this is back when big films like E.T. was maybe only in 1,500 theaters. So for this thing to be in 1,100 theaters with an unknown cast, an unknown director, unknown producers, a production company that just got formed to make that film, and none of us knew what we were doing.
What was the critical reaction? I mean, horror tends to get a bad rap with critics, but
we got some really great reviews. We got a nice review in Variety. We got like 4.5 stars from the New York Post. We had some bad ones too, but we had a lot of good ones. The weirdest review we got was an Orange County paper where the guy said in the first sentence of his review, I haven't seen this film, but based on the fact that it's horror, it must be crap. And then he proceeded to tear the film apart that he had not seen, that he admitted he had not seen. And we had great reviews that we put on from the New York Post, from the LA Times. And he proceeded to say, well, these guys didn't know what they were talking about. And
well, the daughter of one of the victims from Wolf of Wall Street wrote that big op-ed recently attacking Wolf of Wall Street, but she states very clearly at the start, I haven't seen the movie, and you're just like, you really probably should before before you start savaging into something.
It's kind of part one of book reports.
I think it's really not that tough to sit and watch a movie.
And especially this guy in Orange County is like, aren't you a movie reviewer? Isn't that kind of your
whole point.
job?
They kind of pay us for that.
Was his name Rex Reed?
Yeah, Armand White.
I don't know, but I pointed out to Walter, I said, that's why he's at the Orange County Register the LA Times,
For me, I grew up with Night of the Demons. I seen it plenty when I was a kid, but I revisited this Blu-ray before this show. Believe it or not, I could have sworn I saw Witchboard, but when I put on this Blu-ray, I was like, I've never seen this movie before.
Oh, you're kidding.
So I've just seen
yourself a horror fan.
I know.
The shame of Rob.
But for the first time, I got to watch it on this Blu-ray release, and it's a really fun. It's a fun, cool horror movie debut. But what impresses me about it, and I think you even say it on the featurette, is that you approached this, you were not necessarily a horror fan.
No.
I mean, you respected and liked things like Hitchcock and things in that realm, but you were not, so it's not like you approached like, I'm into all the 80s slasher stuff. And what are you doing, Elric?
You don't want to know.
Some type of gum on the bottom of his cup, and he stuck his hand in it.
You just stay serious. You stay serious over there. Some weird gum thing.
Beer, there's gum and tea all over the table. What's the matter with this guy?
It's radio.
But anyway,
there's nothing like a professional show. And this is nothing like a professional show.
But my point being is, so you approached this as not really a horror fan. You were just kind of, I don't know, where were you coming from in terms of picking horror as your first film in the film business as a director?
Well, even though I didn't go see the low budget horror films because they didn't really appeal to me, I knew that low budget horror films were getting into theaters,
right?
That they had a built-in audience and I did some research and film goes up and down. Westerns are hot and then they're not, and crime dramas are hot and then they're not. And even though horror goes up and down where it's super popular and maybe not so much, it's a constant. Horror films are always popular. So I thought, well, if I want to do a film and get it out there, then I should do horror. And just the Ouija board, someone had actually brought one to a party of mine, and while everyone was playing with it, I don't really believe in them, but I remember thinking, wow, this might be an interesting idea for a film. And then in USC, you had to write a feature screenplay, and that's the one I wrote.
And why did the title not stick? Because it's such obviously it's a no-brainer with a film about, I think Witchboard's actually kind of almost more evocative because probably Ouija means more like a game to everyone, I think. But obviously that was the intention, right?
Right. Well, like Rob said, I'm a huge fan of Hitchcock, and one of the things Hitchcock would do was be like, have someone like the birds attack in broad daylight, because he said everyone's scared when it's dark, but you think you're safe in broad daylight. So he likes and I thought I wanted to call it Ouija, and I wanted to not design our own board. I wanted to use a Parker Brothers Ouija board and say, look, you're just playing with this game, and it's like, oh, what do you know? Now you got a ghost in your house trying to kill you. But for legal reasons, we weren't going to be able to get E&O insurance if we called it Ouija.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense.
If you had been with a studio, you think they would have had a different kind of play on that?
Maybe. Because our lawyer said you would win, but it would cost a lot of money, and we really didn't have it.
Right.
And they said, and you're not going to get E&O insurance. And what we would have to have done was be proactive. We would have had to sue Parker Brothers to say the name is no longer copyright, it's public domain.
Which it has to be, right? Because it's been around.
They've been around a lot longer than Parker
what do you
Brothers.
call them? I mean, that's what you call them. You call them Ouija boards. So anyway, we knew we couldn't do that. So during all my research of Ouija boards when I was writing the script, I discovered that they had been called witch boards because it was believed that witches used them to summon familiars and stuff. So I said, well, let's just call it Witchboard. What sucked was in the original script and in the original party scene, he actually says that. Brandon, when he's talking about Ouija boards, he says they used to be called witch boards. But because we weren't calling the film Witchboard at the time, and the party scene was like a half hour long, and I said, we got to get this movie moving along here, we cut it. Then when we ended up having to change the title to Witchboard, we'd already cut the negative, and I thought, son of a bitch. The one time someone called, because throughout the whole film they still call it a Ouija. They know no one ever actually calls it a Witchboard.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but in part 2, I put that speech back in.
Yeah.
Well, now I know better.
Is that available in like a Blu-ray format? Nowhere, right?
Yeah, Witchboard 2. Yeah,
Witchboard 2.
Olive
Really?
Films released it maybe 8 months ago.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's
Haven't
got a
seen that for
comment.
like 15
It's got a
years.
commentary, and it's got like behind the scenes stuff. And bless you.
Thank you.
And it's got some extras too because I provided them.
It must be fun to get more. Oh, sorry, I keep cutting you. It must be fun to get
Does it every week.
to come
know
back
it does.
to a film with more skills. Like, you know what I mean? To like come back to something like Witchboard after doing something like Night of the Demons, and you just become a more skilled director, and then you get
absolutely.
to infuse that into the thing.
Oh yeah, when I went to film school, you'd see somebody who was making their senior project, and I got there as an incoming junior and did my films, and I left, and they were still working on that senior project. And it's like, let it go, dude. Take what you learned from it, warts and all, and apply it to your next movie. But it's very easy to become obsessive if you let yourself and just go back. And I always say, I always feel like I'm really ready to shoot a film right after we wrap. That if I could go back now, right now, I could do a better job than I did. But
That's cool.
you just say, well, I'm just going to move forward and take what I learned and use it the next time.
I was fascinated by the Ouijas that you used in the movie. And I was always wondering, like, where can you find them like that? Because all I've ever seen is the Parker Brother one.
Right.
So you did have them created for the movie.
Yes. As a matter of fact, we have 4 Ouija boards for the movie. The one they get in the lake, which is bluish green, because our lawyers were so concerned about, even though we designed our own board, it still looked a lot like Parker Brothers. So he said, okay, well, they use one in the lake. We'll make that really drastically different.
That's like green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a cool
Right.
looking
It's cool.
board.
It's awesome
that's a
looking.
really
It's got
cool
like, I remember an eye on it for some reason.
And then probably because it looked like a dollar bill. I don't know. But the other board, we actually made 3. So there's a little cherub at the top with his little angel wings, and then 2 little big grown-up man-woman angels on the bottom corners with their big angel wings. And we made 3, one where they're angel wings, one where they're kind of more like bird wings, and one where they're bat wings, so that it would get more evil looking. And then as she used the board throughout the film, we just swithed.
Oh, I never even noticed
Yeah,
that.
No, well, you
I
weren't
got to go back and watch it
You're
again
not
now.
supposed to notice. I was just hoping that subconsciously you would start. The board just feels creepier, and
Like
you
it's
don't,
a character or
and you don't
something.
know why. It just feels creepier.
That's awesome.
So,
Huh. Did
That
you
was the
consult any mystical people, like true believers?
no,
when you're making
but I
this?
read a lot.
Okay, right.
Like a lot of the things that happen. Well, for one thing, my friend who brought the Ouija board to my party was basically like Brandon, very into it, and the thing with the tire blowing out because someone else at the party is making fun of it. Actually, he claimed happened to him. The difference being that no one at the party could, when they tried to change the tire, could get the lug nuts loose, and they called AAA. But when the AAA guy showed up, boom, they just came right off. And then the knife that falls into the ground, into the floor, and starts bleeding was somebody.
That part's great. That's
somebody
actually
claimed
really
that
fun.
happened to them using it. So I thought, well, I'll
Weird.
just use that. So I think one of the reasons it resonates with people is because I stayed pretty close to the mythology, so that it always kind of feels real for a fantasy film, as opposed to going way out there and having really crazy stuff happen. So,
But
Well, I also think you weren't really the thing I find interesting, and I don't mean to harp on the whole not liking horror thing. I mean, because obviously now you like the genre, but I think that's actually a benefit because you weren't really pulling from film like horror films of the time. You were kind of doing your own thing. Because I mean, maybe you guys can correct me. Was there anything like this around the time it came out, or was that the middle of like the slasher?
I was going to ask about this because that's kind of, it was like 83. That was
85.
85. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the kind of the height of the satanic panic, isn't it? So
you're asking the wrong guy. I was not a horror fan. As a matter of fact, a lot of the reviews came out saying how brave and incredible it was that a film that dotes on characters comes out right in supernatural, comes out right in the middle of the slasher craze. It's like, yeah, but I didn't know there was a slasher
Yeah.
craze,
Yeah.
so I just made a film I thought I would want to see.
Out of the vacuum.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
the
And that's-
Satanic Panic was much more a society thing. That's when parents were accusing everybody of who listened to Iron Maiden of being
Judas
Priest.
Satanist and
Yeah.
Judas Priest being played backwards
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
this stuff. So I think that, there was nothing like this coming out in the genre, but I think it would have resonated well with society just because there were these kind of like evil and everyday object overtones going on.
And they weren't
Yeah.
teenagers. The opening scene, you could almost think they were teenagers for a few beats, and then you
Yeah.
start to realize, oh no, they're actually working people, and they live
Yeah.
in a house.
Right,
kind of.
right.
Kind of.
Yeah.
It was hard for me to tell what it was at first.
Yeah.
I
Seemed
thought,
like a
wait, how did they have a
duplex.
huge house like that? But
Well, it's a house turned
Right,
into
it was
apartments, right?
Yeah.
Because when my friend brought the board to my party, I was living in a Victorian home that had been turned into apartments.
cool.
So.
Where was that house? I thought it was Hollywood, but it looked a little
house-
Victorian for Hollywood.
No, it's actually in Hancock Park.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Right across from the Masonic the Masonic Lodge or something. So downtown, right on a busy street corner. So we had to kind of shoot it at the right angle so it looked more suburban.
So we can go see the Witchboard house
Yeah,
Witchboard house
right
tour.
now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Class trip.
But Rob mentioned that you weren't a horror fan, and then through being in this world, like it is a world of conventions and a world
Right.
of sequels. And when did you start exploring other people's films and start?
Well, after I did Night of the Demons, and it was pretty obvious I was now a successful horror director, I thought I'd better start looking at other horror films to, figure out what the hell I was doing.
What grabbed you? I just can't imagine, being so young when we started watching this. It must be. I remember Wes Craven's story he was very late before he had seen horror
In
films.
his 30s or something like that.
Before his first
I
one.
wasn't a big Wes Craven fan. I saw Hills Have Eyes. Now again, I was 20-something by the time I saw them, but I didn't really think it was a good film. I thought Last House on the Left was awful.
Yeah.
And a direct ripoff of Virgin Spring, which
Virgin Spring,
I was a big fan of.
Right.
But
I'm
I
not a
did
Last
think,
House fan,
but
by
I
the
did
way.
think Nightmare on Elm Street was pretty darn good.
Yeah.
As
that
a
was
matter
great.
of fact,
But that's his first imagination film. The other two are much more like real.
Yeah, Witchboard. I was afraid that I was so concerned about making sure I got performances from the actors that once it was all put together, I had this massive panic attack when we were getting ready to start showing it to distributors. That, oh my God, I forgot to make it scary. I was so busy making it dramatic and making you care about these characters that I forgot to
Right.
And so I think at the time I was making Witchboard, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 was in theaters. So 1 was on video. I hadn't seen any of them yet. So I rented Nightmare on Elm Street 1. And I popped it in the video, and I'm sitting there on the floor watching it like a film student, just studying it to see how his film compares to Witchboard, so I can determine whether or not I got the scares right. And Susan and I were dating at the time. She's sitting on the couch behind me, and about halfway through the film, I go, okay, I think I'm all right, because this isn't scaring. Because my own film, Witchboard, didn't scare me.
Right.
I said, this isn't scaring me either, but it seems to have the same beats. So I'm a hard scare, but I think I match the beats. So I think mine's scary too. And I look back at her, and she's sitting there with her knees up and a blanket over her, and she goes, "You don't think this is scary?" And I said, "No, why do you?" And she went, "Yeah." And I went, "Good. That means Witchboard's scary then."
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's funny.
How soon after Witchboard did Night of the Demons come about? Because Demons was not something that you developed, or you weren't the original director on it. That
Right.
was something that you came onto. So was it the success of Witchboard that kind of brought you to that project?
Yes and no. What happened was the producers, Jeff and Walter, who'd produced Witchboard, decided they wanted to do a comedy. And I said, oh, gosh, guys, comedies are hard. I mean, especially low-budget comedies. I mean, even big budgets with names, romantic comedies. At that time, they weren't doing well at all. And I said, you really should. And they wanted to develop a script based on their own background. And I said, yeah, but then you have to pay for it. You hire someone, they write it. You don't like it. You're stuck. You still have to pay them. I said, as a company this small, you should find a script you like and buy it. But they were determined they wanted to do it that way. Anyway, it just turned out they had a lot of problems with it. Not necessarily their fault either, but just they trusted the wrong people in certain places. So anyway, they finally got it made, and it turned out a lot better than I ever thought it would. But it was a long, hard road to get it to where they got it. And a lot of that is due to Walter Justin's tenacity. He just wouldn't, he's not one of those guys that once he starts something, he says, oh, this isn't working, I give up. He was determined that film was getting finished and it was getting done as well as it could possibly get done, to his credit.
Can we say the movie, or do we have to IMDb it?
No, I think when they shot it, it was called Tips, but I think the final title ended up being Pucker Up and Bark Like a Dog.
Wow.
Whoa.
So,
Hey now.
yeah, hey now. Wendy O. Williams was in it.
Okay,
So,
that's good.
I'm looking this one up, kids.
yeah.
He was the
It's
exec
a very
producer.
hard to find, yeah. Anyway, so then they decided, wow, we got to make another horror film. So they got introduced to Joe Augustin somehow, and he had this script called Halloween Party, and they read it and they liked it, and they optioned it, bought it, and they were in prep on it. And Joe was friends with the director, and I cannot remember the guy's name, but he's a fairly well-known director now, and he was going to do the film. And he was also a writer himself, and New Line called him and said something he wrote, they want to buy it and produce it and let him direct. Mm-hmm. So he decided he'd rather direct his own script than Joe's, and he left. And Walter, I think based on his experiences with Tips and now this director walking out on them, just said, I think Joe wanted to look at other directors, and Walter just said, no, I'm going to go with Kevin. He's trustworthy. He did a great job for us on Witchboard. I know he'll come through for us. So they called me out of the blue and offered it to me over the phone. And I was about to sell my car to pay my rent. So yay, absolutely.
So taking a job like that, what did you see on the script side of this that you could, what did it light up in your mind? Because it is a really, we always talk on the show about how imaginative the films of the 80s were and how playful they are. Was that the script level or? Yeah,
the script, it had major problems structurally, but the dialogue was really hysterical. So I said, okay, this is good, because I'm a big believer in, if you want people to like your characters, they should make them. If the characters make your audience laugh, your audience will like them. People like people who make them laugh. So I always try to make my hero witty. Mm-hmm. So anyway, and here was a bunch of guys. They weren't necessarily witty, and a lot of them were actually obnoxious, but they were saying really funny stuff. So I thought, okay, I can work with that. And then the fact is, it goes 45 minutes of these kids just wandering around the house talking bullshit before anything happens. So I thought, well, this gives me a chance to kind of play with the camera and lighting and, see if I can create mood and keep it interesting visually and tension-wise for that 45 minutes until we bite out a tongue and start gouging some eyes. So, that's where a lot of those great shots come from.
That was the most fun for me about revisiting it on Blu-ray, because it's been quite a couple of years since I've actually seen it, and I always appreciated it. But the older you get and the more movies you watch, the more films you get a little more conscious of just filmmaking technique, how things are done and all that. And I mean, I always remembered Steve Johnson's effects. That was the thing as a kid that always stood out to me. But watching the Blu-ray and watching it with the commentary with you and the cast, I was just like, I was thoroughly impressed with how well directed it was. And I was like, look at that shot. Oh, look how it worked out and all that stuff. So it's it's a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you. My meds were just right at the time.
And speaking of, what was it like both getting together with everybody again for the commentary? Because you'd pretty much kept in touch with most of the people. I'd heard that somewhere.
Yeah. But we'd actually kind of lost touch over the last few years. Kathy Podwell from Night of the Demons kept in touch for a long time because we had children the same age. So we would actually, there was a park that was dead center between my house and hers. So we would have play dates for the kids all the time. And then we would visit when we did that. And then Stephen Nichols had a daughter directly between my children's age. And they moved into our neighborhood several years after we had made Witchboard. Together. So our kids started hanging out and actually having sleepovers and all that. So I was in touch with those two for a very long time until the kids got old enough and grew up and went off on their separate ways. But it was still, in both cases, Witchboard and Night of the Demons, it was just a lot of fun to get back together. I laughed so hard on both of them. I had so much fun. Did you hear the commentaries on both?
I did. Night of the Demons. I haven't watched the commentary.
There's a section where early on, Steve Nichols complains about we did most of the Ouija board stuff at the end, like on a pickup day, because our first DP was basically a first timer like a lot of us, but he just he couldn't live up to the challenge like the rest of us managed to do. So we replaced him with a seasoned guy. And we were like 3 days behind at that point. So the way we decided that it was the easiest was to not shoot any of the Ouija board close-ups during production, wait and put them all at the end. So we got 3 people, Kim, in to be hand extras. And he was complaining about he didn't like the hand extras that was his. And then later at the boat when him and Jim's character are doing, we start talking. And it's just, I tend to say stuff that everyone laughs and like, the next days, if you ask me, what did you say that was so funny? I have no clue. I don't remember what I said. It just comes out. It comes out. I don't even listen to it. It just comes out. Everyone laughs. I remember that everyone laughed, but I couldn't tell you what I said.
Right.
So I was watching the commentary, and it got to that point, and I didn't remember anything we had said, and we started and I started listening to it as an audience member, and I was crying. I was laughing so
really
hard.
funny.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, this is great, and you can hear us just howling while we're talking too. We're just having a great time.
Yeah.
Now,
They're a
did
lot
you
of fun.
actually go up to Big Bear to shoot the boat sequences?
Yes, we did. Wow. We were there for a week, and everyone in the crew and cast would wake up every morning with bloody noses.
Oh my gosh, it looked very cold.
It was pretty chilly. It wasn't too bad because we wrapped on a Saturday, and a lot of the crew went back, and some of us stayed up there on Sunday and went water skiing. So it was cold, but not so cold that we weren't willing to stay and go water skiing.
We didn't touch on, I was just looking at the title because you just said Halloween Party. Why did it change to Night of the Demons?
Mustafa Akkad threatened to sue us.
Really?
He thinks he owns the word
a holiday?
Halloween.
He thinks
A holiday.
A holiday or whatever.
Yeah,
That's
actually,
kind of
Walter talks about it in the interviews, the executive producer and the co-owner of Blue Rider Pictures, and he talks about Mustafa calling him, and he told Mustafa, he goes, well, look, we have E&O insurance, so nobody's worried that you have a suit.
Right.
Yeah. It's like you don't own the holiday.
Yeah,
really.
exactly. And Mustafa, I guess, told him that might be true, but if you keep that title, I will make sure you never get E&O for any other film you ever make.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so they said, we're thinking of changing the title. And I don't think this is in the interviews, but they came back and they were talking to distributors and one of the distributors that were maybe going to do it might even be Republic, I can't remember now, were really high on the title Demon Boogie. Was what they were going to call it. And I said, oh my God, I cannot have a film called Demon Boogie with my name on it. So I went home and I typed up 50 alternate titles, like Night of the Demons, Night at Hull House, The Possession of Hull House, The Haunting of Hull House, Demons of Hull House, and I came up with 50 different titles, and I took them in the next day. And I said, any one of these.
But not Demon Boogie.
Had you say, because we had a trivia question recently, we had the Jacques Tenier film, Curse of the Demon, which had...
it was also called Night of the Demon.
Without
Demon.
S. Had you seen that before? Or?
I had seen it, but when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing like this film,
Yeah,
obviously.
no, and I didn't even remember. And I think when I saw it, it was called Curse of the Demon.
I think it was Curse.
In the States.
Largely.
And I did not know, but I didn't even remember it when we were doing Night of the Demons.
It's funny how the title, though, then makes the creature, because it's called Night of the Demons, now we see Angela, now we think it's a demon.
Right.
We don't think it's a possessed spirit. We think it's a demon, and
Right.
it shades, and then I start thinking, what is a demon? Like, we all know what a vampire is, we all know it, but it's one of those more nebulous creatures.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know where it comes from or what, Bava's Demons is the only other one I can really think of, but I think it really adds
And it's
something.
a similar thing. It's like people getting possessed.
Yeah. It's a very similar concept.
But they look more grotesque, I guess.
Right,
Like come from hell or something.
Where did you come up with the design since you didn't have a huge horror lexicon to rely on for effects?
Well, I'd seen The Exorcist. I saw all the big studio horror films. I saw The Omen, The Exorcist, Jaws, Alien. I just didn't see Halloween, Friday the 13th.
And you're hard scared, so did any of them actually scare you?
The original Alien
okay. Yeah, that
creeped me out quite a bit.
Tension.
I remember walking out, because when I was a kid, like shows like Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea were really popular. And they had a monster of the week, some guy in a suit on the submarine and killing people, and they were stupid. Even as a kid, I thought, this is stupid. So I remember walking out of that and turning to my friend and saying, if you would have told me you could make a monster in a spaceship movie scary, I would have said, you're out of your fucking mind. So I was very impressed because I just thought that you could never make one of those and make it scary.
Yeah.
So I found that pretty creepy. And The Exorcist, I still think is probably the best horror film ever made. Although I did like The Omen a lot. Yeah, I did like The Omen a lot. And you talk about appreciating the craft of filmmaking. I so appreciated Richard Donner's craft in The Omen, where he really crafted those set pieces beautifully. And it's so funny because a lot of reviewers compare Witchboard to The Exorcist because of the whole possession angle, but I actually structurally copied The Omen because I was so impressed with it as a film.
Yeah, because again, seeing this with fresh eyes now, there was one bit. I don't want to give away the character if you haven't seen it, but you should have seen it by now. The one with the kind of like the hatchet to the head. For some reason, that was a very Omen-esque moment. Like it reminded me of that shocking like decapitation from The Omen.
Right.
Really?
Yeah, I just like watching. I was like, oh, because it comes kind of abruptly and out of nowhere where it felt like
very little fanfare.
It probably reminds you of it because he copied it. He just said. It's probably why.
Exactly.
I know why it reminds you of that, Rob.
I didn't copy the deaths. I wish I could have because they were great.
Yeah.
And we didn't have the budget, but I copied the. One of the things I liked about The Omen was that they didn't just sit around in the haunted house being acted upon. They actually got in a plane and went to another country and investigated, which is why I had my guys go to Big Bear. I just wanted them to be proactive.
But did you, like, back to Becca's question, did you help design Angela? Or did you have a vision, or did the writer have a vision of what they wanted that to be?
No, he just said demons. And my only demons were The Exorcist. So I thought, okay, so basically it's a human that looks all fucked up. and then Steve Johnson came in with the design ideas and, it was like, okay, that sounds good. Let's do that.
Yeah.
It's so funny when things become iconic. Like you're making a movie and it's just one part of your movie, and then 20 years later, it's one of 20 probably iconic horror figures.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, at what point did you realize that Night of the Demons kind of became this cult thing? Because I mean, I always remember it as a franchise. As a kid, I always remember seeing multiple Night of the Demons movies on the shelf.
I think I realized that it might have some legs Tuesday.
When USA Today was talking to you.
Yeah, when USA Today was talking to me, I thought, holy shit, USA Today is asking me about Night of the Demons. We actually had a screening. Cinefamily did a screening, and it was sold out. They turned people away at the door. They put seats in the aisles. They had people standing up in the back. It was packed, and about half the cast was there with me. And about halfway through the film, Billy Gallo, who's sitting in front of me, leans back and says, "Did you ever think that we'd be sitting in a packed house 25 years later watching this?" And it's like,
but to be fair, most of them were there to see Ryan Turek.
Exactly. That's it.
Because we know he's listening somewhere right now.
Hi, Ryan.
Flex.
But what was fun was I heard, I didn't make it down the screening, but I heard that for some reason they had a problem with, I think one of the projections caught on fire. So they were only running on one. So I heard in between reels, you guys got up and gave commentary live.
Well, what would happen? Like that's one of their reels, one of their projectors burned up, so they couldn't do reel changes. So at the end of each reel, they would have to turn on the house lights while the guy put the next reel up. So while he did, they would auction off something, ask a trivia question and give him a T-shirt, and then me and the cast would talk about that first 20 minutes they just seen and talk and mention stuff about, oh, well, we did this that way. Then the film would go on and then it would break again. And then we'd talk about what they had just seen and tell them stuff there. So it actually ended up, they should do that with all the films, actually. I think it ended up being a lot more entertaining because we're able to address things right as they had seen them and was still fresh in their minds.
Yeah, and these aren't films that probably, not many of them would have been first-timers. I'm sure there'd be some.
There were like 5.
Yeah.
Because I asked when we were up there, I said, how many people here who have not seen this film? And 5 of them raised their hands.
We are pretty lucky in LA to get an experience like that.
Yeah.
Unlike just going to a movie. It's pretty cool. We can't not talk about Witchboard 2, so I haven't seen it in so long.
I haven't seen Witchboard 2 in forever.
My memory was that I thought at the time when I was young, I remember thinking I liked it even more, but it could just be because it was more advanced.
Experience seeing it, because you were saying before we started.
Well, I was telling him before that Days of Our Lives is on. That's Witchboard 1.
Oh,
but
right,
Days of
because
Our,
you're not from the U.S.
Well, yeah, I grew up in New Zealand, but Days of Our Lives about 10 years behind, I think, back then when I was growing up. And I had a friend who recorded it. And so if I was home from school, I'd watch it. But I remembered Patch.
Right.
He's like the one character, Bo and Patch. That's what I remember.
Right.
Was
and Patch
watching
was cool.
Days of Our Lives a common teenage boy activity
I have no idea.
in New Zealand?
I mean, you know, I'm here now. That's all I can say.
No,
it
he
led
would
me down
watch
this
Days
path.
of Our Lives, and then he would get his ass kicked by the neighborhood kids.
Exactly. Yeah, it was like that.
I'm just curious.
It was maybe.
American TV.
It was American TV.
Oh,
and
that's
to
right,
be
yeah.
fair, we had 2 channels in New Zealand.
Yeah, when I lived in Bermuda, we had one,
Yeah.
and it didn't even come on until 3 p.m. It went off at midnight.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Midnight,
Wow.
11 o'clock or midnight, a little Kiwi comes on and he turns off, pushes a button, and your TV goes off.
Yeah.
Until like a few years ago. So that's how it was. But I remember seeing Patch, and then I remember watching, I think a Witchboard came on TV, I believe, and I remember just being kind of blown away. Oh my God, it's Patch, but he's younger. And I'm like, it kind of did my head in, like how these 2 things could have happened. But then I remember seeing Witchboard 2 probably on VHS during that period, and I think kind of like I just kind of maybe the ambition of it felt like, and it felt into like the locations were kind of bigger, and
Right.
it felt maybe it's less original in the sense that it is more like, oh, the beautiful girl who's you know just maybe it falls into the typical 80 trends a bit more, but I felt like it was made with a lot of creativity. And when we talk about like your craft advancing, there's certain practical things you did. For people, if you haven't seen the film, look at the trailer. You'll see the arm shooting out of the Ouija board with the and it still has the markings
on the
it.
arm.
I mean, that's some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
What was your experience going? Like, did they have to talk you into returning to do a sequel, or?
No, I had actually written a sequel like within months after we did the first one. I don't know why. I was being pretty optimistic that anyone would want one, but I did. And then because they had so much problems with their comedy that they did next, and then we did Night of the Demons, which they were pretty sure was going to be a hit. And by then, Witchboard came out while we were doing Night of the Demons, and it was a hit. So now all the investors wanted to do a Witchboard too. So we were going to have a lot more money, and I was going to have a lot more toys to work with. And a lot of shots I had to scratch from the original Witchboard due to cost, I was able to now do in Witchboard 2. So like the, spirit POV going through a moving car, going through the windshield and out the back window. And,
Cool.
The mirrored coffee table where you see the person who's falling off the second floor, you see the reflection of her coming down and then hitting the table as opposed to shooting her fall the normal way. So I got to do a lot of stuff like that I had wanted to do similar stuff in the first one and couldn't do. Perfect example is in Witchboard, Tawny's digging in the trash can. She finds the Ouija board. She runs up the stairs. We float up and catch her as she comes into the apartment through the window. I had wanted to go through the window, but they wouldn't let me take the window out to do it. So on Witchboard 2, I crafted this, and I did. I went through that frickin' window and down the stairs and followed her into the bathroom.
That's cool.
Know?
Now,
to catch up.
How did you and Tawny connect originally? Did she just audition?
She just auditioned, yeah.
Well, and was she kind of, I know during the 80s she ended up becoming kind of a household name after she danced on Whitesnake's car.
Right.
But at
that
this
hadn't
point,
happened yet.
At this point, she was still just kind of an actress trying to make her way?
Right. Well, she had done the Tom Hanks film, but Tom Hanks wasn't Tom Hanks yet either.
But that was a fun film.
Yeah.
Bachelor
And she
Party.
was,
Bachelor
and she was
Party.
very likable in it. And she'd also done the Jusha Kane film, Gwendolyn, which I had not seen. I didn't know who Tawny was. But as a matter of fact, I remember the ads for Gwendolyn on TV, and they would say, starring Tawny Katane, and I would laugh because I'd say, who the fuck is Tawny Katane? They make a big deal like starring Tawny Katane.
That was your Inception moment.
Yeah, and
In your mind.
I was like, what? Who's she?
Yeah.
So I thought that was very funny. But I noticed when she came in and read for us that all the guys, and we had lots of beautiful girls come in and read for this. I mean, Playmates and Penthouse Pets and just beautiful models. But all the guys kind of reacted when Tawny left. Oh, who's that? Who's that? Who's that? So I knew, okay, well, this girl's got something that the other girls don't seem to have. I actually liked another actress a little better, but Tawny was the one all the guys reacted to. And I thought, well, we want her to be something special, so you'd believe these two guys ended a friendship over her. And then what sold it was the casting director, Becca Boss, and then Susan, too. I brought home one of Tawny's tapes, and we watched it. Both found her really likable. And I thought, well, okay, the women aren't threatened by her and the men all think she's sexy as hell. So that's pretty much what you're looking for in a leading lady.
Yeah, she's like a girl next door, but with a lot more fire than
Right.
you would usually
Well,
think.
she has that
the
huge
hair.
fire, you know, like a
She looks like an
lion's
Amazon
mane.
because of the hair, but she's
Yeah.
not really an
No.
Amazon, which is cool, Yeah, I thought she was great. Rewatching it a couple days ago, she has I wanted to see more. I didn't know anything about Whitesnake. We didn't have Whitesnake in New Zealand,
Right. Well,
so
see,
I
for
knew nothing
me,
about that stuff.
one of
You
the
guys are
things
too
that-
busy watching Days
Yeah,
of Our
Days of Our
Lives.
Days of Our Lives, yeah.
We get one CD a year came with one of those book club memberships. So it's kind of sad.
But, oh my God, it's a young Steve Nichols, and he's got both his eyes. His depth perception is returned.
I need to see Witchboard 2 again now as a grown adult and see how. Have you watched it again? If I guess for the commentary.
Oh, I did the commentary. Yeah.
Did it hold up?
Yeah, I mean, Amy's a cutie pie. Amy Dolan's.
She's really good.
She's got a lot of the same qualities that we were looking, that we found in Tawny. That she's very girl next door-y, but she's also incredibly sexy. And
but I'm confused because if it was the same company as Night of the Demons, and then they were going to do a sequel, but you couldn't do it because you're doing Witchboard 2, wouldn't they have benefited from just waiting for you to be done? Having just done such a good job on the first Night.
Well, here's something interesting. At the time, the gal running Republic Pictures and I did not get along. And so she grudgingly, well, I guess we were already set to make Witchboard 2 when Republic made a 4-picture deal. They wanted 2 sequels to both films. I was already attached to Witchboard 2, so she grudgingly worked with me. She didn't really want to work with me on Night of the Demons, too. So it was just easier not to deal with it. The funny thing is, by the time they were doing Night of the Demons 3, she was gone, and the new guy loved me and wanted me back. But since they were shooting in Canada, they couldn't have an American. They hated all the scripts they were getting, script proposals they were getting from Canadian writers. And I just happened to be in the office doing something else. And I said, how's Night of the Demons 3 going? And Jeff said, oh, we can't find a decent script. And I said, you know what I always thought would be cool is what if the kids, instead of being kids there for a party, they like robbed a liquor store and they're hiding out there. So now they're guns and they think they're tough and they think Angela, and they find her and they take her hostage and they don't realize what the hell, they just grabbed a tiger by the tail. And he said, oh, that's a great idea. And I guess he went and pitched it to Republic and they said, absolutely, that's the one we want. So they came back to me and they hired me to write it. But now, because I was the writer, I couldn't also be the director.
Oh, because of the point system for Canada.
Right. In the 3 top positions, writer, director, producer, 2 of them have to be Canadian.
And for those of you guys who are listening who aren't Hollywood insiders and know the whole cool point system, Canada gives you tax breaks and gives money back to film productions as long as you use a certain amount of Canadian crew and staff in your top positions. So it's creating employment in Canada.
And most countries do that. Like, quite a few have loopholes just like that. But.
Right. And because of that, then you can take a $1 million budget and get about 1.5 out of it in Canada. So they both Witchboard 3 and Night of the Demons 3 were both shot in Canada.
But you like number 2. You were saying back before we started on air.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know Brian Trenchard Smith, the mad Australian who lit himself on fire on one of his first films to prove to George, who was the Bond? George.
Yeah.
George
Lazenby.
George Lazenby. I remember him telling me that story where he was like, Lazenby wouldn't light himself on fire, so he lit himself on fire, and then Lazenby did the stunt and hurt himself and punched him in the face. And like literally not trying to knock him out.
What film was this on?
That is his crazy Australian. It's in that exploitation documentary.
Yeah, it's. I actually know. I saw it on HBO when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool movie. I mean, the stunts because he had a stunt background.
Right.
He did stunt rock.
It's mentioned in Not Quite Hollywood.
It really is, and that documentary is great.
It'll be on IMDb. It was The Man from Hong Kong.
Man from Hong Kong.
Yeah,
it's
like
really
I said, it was
fun.
one of the first films I saw when HBO was
Oh.
like brand new and was just showing films. Yeah. That was one of the films I saw when I was like a teenager, and I thought, oh, that's pretty cool because of George Lazenby. Because one of my favorite Bond films was the one he starred in.
Yeah, so. he's strange because he's someone you would look over his films and you wouldn't necessarily identify him. It's such a journey career.
Yeah.
But there's some really good stuff in there. Actually, he's British, right? British via Australia.
No, he's Australian, I think.
I thought he might have been a Brit who ended up in Aussie.
Maybe
during that whole
but he was. I think he was a famous Australian model at first. I think.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
before
that.
he became a Bond.
Okay, interesting. Oh, Lazenby. You're talking about Lazenby. I'm
Lazenby.
talking about Trenchard Smith.
Oh, no, Lazenby. I think Lazenby was also Australian.
Oh, yeah. Lazenby definitely is Australian.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Because Sam Neill almost
Right.
became Bond. New Zealand represent. We almost got a Bond, even though he looked more like a Bond villain, which would have been great casting.
Yeah.
I think he would have been better than Dalton. I mean, he's a little suaver.
Hey.
Yeah.
I think he would have been.
Dalton.
Dalton was good, but he was more like an action star.
Yeah.
I feel like Sam Neill had that quality at one point.
Yeah.
That was almost our possession reference for the show.
Exactly.
Almost.
I talk about the film
Okay.
sometimes.
Yes, I noticed that the topic of conversation is straying dangerously away from me.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, let's
we
fix
don't
that.
want to have that.
No, but what is that feeling like when you see something? Because it's not like you got kicked off. It's not necessarily a hard feelings thing, right? Because you're working on Witchboard 2.
Yeah.
But when you see somebody, just in general, I can't really imagine making something, creating a world, and then somebody else creates the world, a continuation.
Continues the world, yeah.
Did you enjoy seeing that, or were you surprised by things in it, or?
No, I thought it was really good. I thought actually that I think of the two scripts, the second one is a better script. So I was kind of resentful that he got the better script. You know, I thought Joe had written the first one, and this was now his second one. So he learned stuff too.
Yeah,
so
right.
his second script was I thought the characters were better. I thought the story moved better and
Good effects. The effects were stories.
Well, yeah. Again, I think in both cases, Witchboard and Night of the Demons, the originals, were probably about 800,000.
Wow.
I know when I did Witchboard 2, I had 1.6 million, which is like almost double the budget. Still small, but compared to what I had on the first one. And I know for Witchboard 2, they probably had like 1.5. I mean, Night of the Demons 2 was probably the same, probably 1.5, 1.6. So Brian had a lot more to work with than I did. So, I mean, again, I found it thoroughly entertaining. I think he did a great job. And I think Joe's script was impeccable.
Something. Oh, so you want to?
Oh yeah, I was going to touch upon something that Elric and I were discussing because he told me that he had screened your movie Brain Dead at the Jump Cut Cafe.
Oh right,
a year or two ago, whatever.
No,
it
it was pretty recent. It was maybe 6 months, 4 months,
several months ago.
Yeah.
And it's just, I guess the challenges of like the challenges back then doing independent cinema as opposed to the challenges of doing independent cinema now. And, since you were kind of always in the independent world, did you ever flirt with some of the studio stuff, or did you kind of stick in the independent world because of the more creative freedom, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, sure. If Universal wanted to give me, $50 million to make a big movie, I wouldn't spit on it. But honestly, while I was still in film school, okay, my undergraduate film, which was a dramatic short about a Vietnam vet, ended up winning an Emmy. Then my graduate film was a dark comedy about an atheist lawyer who ends up representing a guy who claims to be the second coming of Christ. Based on that, Ivan Reitman hired me to write and direct 3 low-budget comedies for him. And so I wrote the first one. I was still a full-time film student while I was writing. I had an office on the lot, but I never went to it because I was a full-time student and also a TA. I had a TA ship to pay all my tuition. So I was pretty much, so I wrote the script at home with a partner and took it in. And I thought it was really funny and really inventive. And Ivan, when I pitched the idea, laughed out loud like 3 times at the pitch. But the lead had to be Japanese American, and I think once he read the script, he got at the time. I mean, now there are a lot of Asian actors you could think of. Oh, I could get him or him or him or him. But back then,
it was the guy from Revenge of the Nerds. He was like the only one. Yeah,
and it couldn't be that. He had to be John Lone. He had to be really good looking and charming, but have no accent. He was like a 3rd generation Japanese American. He had to talk like you or I, just happened to be Japanese descent. So they got worried that we would never find someone like that. And I think that he said he didn't think the script was as funny as the pitch, but I disagreed. But, what did I know? He had just made Ghostbusters, which at the time was the top grossing comedy of all time, and I was still in film school. So anytime we had a disagreement, he would end it with, well, Kevin, I think I've proven I know what's funny. And so, what am I going to say to that?
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, but that was my only time working in the studio system, and I was just so not happy with that I thought I got paid really well for the script, but I didn't own it. It's sitting on a shelf at Columbia. It'll probably never get made ever. And I thought I'd rather not spend all that time and energy and blood and sweat and tears on something that no one's ever going to get to see. So I kind of decided that then and there I would probably go the independent route.
But then it's a funny word now, even saying indie film, because I'll sometimes be talking about something Annapurna Pictures, for instance.
Yeah.
They call Zero Dark 30 an independent film.
Right.
But it's almost $40 million movie.
Yeah.
But like there's indie, then there's indie. But so when you were making these films, 800,000 to $1 million, then I imagine 800,000 would be what, like one and a bit now, maybe more. If you're in the
I'd say
indie
a
world,
little bit more.
maybe more.
Yeah.
Because even 1 in a million or like 1.5 now it's really high.
It's on the
indie.
high end for her.
Yeah.
But what I mean is like, so that's indie. You call that indie. I look at your films and they look like they came through a studio model just because they're so polished. But then with Brain Dead, we're talking about indie film because it's like you're putting it together. You probably have the camera in your hands, or one guy does, and there's not much of a crew around that person.
Yeah.
So it's like, I guess the difference almost saying self-made independent versus independently financed.
Right.
I think that's a fascinating. I think that's also what me and Rob often talk about because Charles Band was here a couple weeks ago. How does a career last? Through major changes in technology, and I thought Brain Dead's a really fun movie. And I wondered, while I was watching was that a harder experience? Was it a liberating experience? Someone like David Lynch obviously just went full force with Inland Empire and said he'd never go back to film for good or bad.
Right.
What was your experience making that really different kind of indie?
It was, I actually had a good time. I had a good time. I personally lost money on it, but, because I was, like you said, I was basically helping with the financing personally, and I was
that was pre-Kickstarter and all that, right?
I was pre, and I was working for free. We pay, and one of the things I wanted to do was a lot of these indie films nobody gets paid. They say, oh, it's all deferred, and then of course there's never a dime because the films don't make a profit because the distributors keep it all. So I didn't want to do that. So we made sure we had enough money that everyone got paid and got paid pretty. I mean, not great, but the key people were getting paid $1,000 a week. So we were actually paying real, honest to goodness salaries. That except for me and the producers, we were all basically working for free. That said, it was also my first time working with digital. And so in a way that was scary for me because it was the first time I'd been on a set where I didn't know every aspect of the filmmaking process because I wasn't working with film, which I was familiar with, and I was working with digital. I had to really trust my DP. And I had other DPs I trusted, but I always knew that if they couldn't get the job done, I knew where to put a light, and I knew what the f-stop or the t-stop was, and I knew what lens to use, and I knew what the exposure should be. With digital, I didn't, and I felt like naked. I felt like I was on the set naked, because that for me, I'm the guy who can do everyone else's job, not as well as they can do, because it's like if I can do it as well as you, I don't need you. I want you to be better at your job than I would be doing your job, but I've always found comfort in the fact that in an emergency, I can do that job if I have to. And this was the first time I knew
you couldn't at that
I
stage,
would have no frickin' clue. I didn't even know how to turn the frickin' camera on.
And it's early generation digital too. So like the camera development in say the last 2 years when we're like Cine Alta and we're like, oh my God, look, everything looks gorgeous. Back then it was still hard to get the shots not to blow out, like sunlight, and you're in daylight a lot.
You were having to add special lenses to make them look like film.
And it was almost like
digital.
you had to take everything you knew about lighting film and flip it upside down. That it was actually the digital worked better at night. You could light with a lot less light than you would with film, but then in the daytime, like you said, you had to really be careful. You had to stop down even further than you thought seemed normal because it could be blown out so easily.
But did it speed up your shoot process? Did you work faster? Or?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like, you got a little card, you stick it in the camera. And one of the things, we were shooting on a Sunday once, and we ran out of space on the card. And we still had shots to do, and we were able to just plug it into a TV. And I said, I'm not going to use that take. I'm not going to use that one. And we deleted it, and we got ourselves 6 minutes of tape or card that we could then shoot. I could never have done that with film. I'd have just been, either I better have extra stock laying around, or we have to send some poor PA rushing around town to find a lab that's open to give us more film stock. So it does give you a freedom that you don't have with film.
Were there things you didn't like about the change, like switching, just the change in how you were making film, besides not being paid, obviously?
No, other than that, I shot it just like I would a film. I basically did everything I would have done. I just knew I had a lot less money than I had even on Witchboard or those films. So I knew And the location, although it looks big, that cabin looks big, it's probably about as big as this room. But, we use short lenses and we would stage stuff. I would put the camera like one far corner and put everyone in the center of the room. And then they would talk this way past the camera. And then I would go over there and I put these people in the center of the room looking the other way and shoot them. So it looked like the cabin had depth when it didn't, so that I could justify why it took, time for them to cross the room, when in reality they could fall down and hit their head on the opposite wall.
You also must have had some money in the budget because you had one very big star in your film, Jim Wynorski.
Jim Wynorski. Yes.
I mean, I know he doesn't work for free, especially topless.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
was he topless?
Topless sheriff.
I guess he was, if you consider he didn't have his beard. So,
That's
so
right.
he was.
Were you friend? Let's say he's someone you got to know through the filmmaking world?
Well, yeah,
or?
my brother had a sound house, his own sound production facility, and Jim mixed a billion of his films at Dennis's place. So I always run into Jim when I come to visit Dennis. So Jim and I got to know. It's how I got to know Dennis and Fred Olin Ray both. And Jim actually did a little action film with Corey Haim called Demolition High. And out of the blue called me and said, "Hey, I'm producing a sequel, Demolition U. You interested?" And I thought, it was like 2 months before Christmas. I said, I could use some Christmas money, sure. So I did a film for him. He produced and I directed, called Demolition University with Corey Haim.
Wow.
You have to watch that film, everyone. Tell me if it's good right before I watch it. I need recommendations.
I recommend you watch Witchboard too.
Oh, yeah. Get back to Witchboard. We didn't ask his favorite Hitchcock film.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
It is not my favorite is North by Northwest.
Okay.
Nice.
I also like Rear Window a lot. I think Vertigo is really slow. And I know that's like, his masterpiece, but I just don't. I'm not a big fan. I didn't like The Birds. I didn't dislike The Birds, but I had friends who thought it was scary, and it was like, really? I didn't appreciate Psycho the first time I saw it. I'm a bigger fan of it now. I loved Sabotage. Here's why I think Hitchcock's such a great, brilliant filmmaker, is he started out in silent films. And he was making a film, and I cannot remember the name of it now. I'm having a senior moment here. But they had started shooting it silent, and halfway through, they said, we got to turn it into a talkie, because talkies were not a fad. They were actually here to stay.
A Lodger, maybe, or one of them?
No, it's about a girl who goes home with a guy innocently, and he ends up trying to rape her, and he's got like a bowl of fruit with a knife on the table, and she grabs the knife and stabs him and kills him. And then she just, she's feeling ashamed, stupid, whatever, and she just leaves. So he might even be semi-famous, like an actor or something. I can't remember now. I saw it so long ago. But she goes home, and she's still living with her parents, and she's sitting at the dining table, and now it's made the papers, the story of the murder. And her mom's talking about, oh my God, listen, this poor man, he was found, he was stabbed with a knife, and they just, you see the mom wandering around in the background of the kitchen, and our heroine is sitting at the table, and the camera's just slowly going in on her, and the mom just keeps droning. And it's like, oh my gosh! And then he was stabbed with a knife, and then the knife went right through him. A knife, and it was just every time the mom said knife, it just hit, and that was the only word the girl was hearing. Everything else was inaudible, but knife. And I thought, how brilliant is that to tell us exactly where her head is?
Yeah, it's really interesting.
And it wasn't even visual. It's like, here's a medium that he just started working with, sound, and he already knew better than the people that were doing the musicals how to screw around with it and get something out of it.
Wow.
I saw recently somebody, it's online, and I wish I knew the name. I think it was Kaleidoscope. It was for one of the last films he was meant to do, and is basically like softcore. Like it was, how Frenzy kind of pushes things. It's like Frenzy, but seeing everything. And they had all this film he had shot, and he pitched the studio, and the studio said no at a certain point. I think it was before his last picture. But it's really like crazy racy. Like I was kind of shocked. It was almost like his inner, he finally got to get it out. But by then no one cared. No one wanted it, Well,
I remember 2020 did a thing about horror films and talked about Night of the Demons and Evil Dead and stuff like that, and how graphic they were, and why do they? Hitchcock got there was no graphics. And I remember watching it and thinking, that's because they wouldn't let him.
Yeah.
Look at Frenzy. You know, if
Yeah,
he was
pushed it,
allowed,
yeah.
he would have been doing what we're doing. He just wasn't allowed to do it.
Definitely.
You know, it's like,
Yeah,
Maybe
no,
not very
Psycho,
much
especially
with-
the shower scene, he would have kept going. He would have pushed it.
Yeah.
He didn't.
Yeah.
But then that was a great limitation for him.
well,
Yeah,
I think
that was the
sometimes the
creative
limitation.
benefit.
I think Twin Peaks is probably the best thing Lynch ever did because he had the limits of
Mm-hmm.
television weekly programming, forcing him to not go too far
Right.
out there.
Yeah.
I
He
agree
was
with
still
that.
out there enough to be
That's
Lynch, but he still had to, follow a formulaic story that made him more palatable to a bigger audience. I
Yeah.
think.
And Fire Walk With Me is a good example because that's when he was able to
Unleashed.
go the exact
Unleashed,
same
yeah.
story, just go out there and it's
Unleashed.
just
And it's
kind
out
of freaking crazy.
Yeah, and it goes right back to Lynchian
Yeah.
Right. Totally.
craziness.
We have a couple of fan questions that we thought
Okay.
we'd throw at you. You answered like half of them already, so that's
Oh, where?
that's good.
Oh, okay. Just in the process.
And
Yeah,
probably
yeah, I
the
did.
rest are probably answered in the commentaries.
Right,
but-
I'm sure.
Probably. But actually, this is a really good one that I wanted to know
Okay.
from Justin Graves, and it has a lot to do with the tagline. I once said on one of our earlier shows when we were talking about VHS that if I saw a title on the shelf that made reference to Freddy or Jason or anything, I'd immediately be like, oh, well, I got to see this.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, the tagline for this one it was Angela's having a party. Jason and Freddy are too scared to come, but you'll have a hell of a time. So Justin Graves asks,
I never heard that one.
really?
No.
Get out of here. Let's see. So,
Gullible Galluzzo.
Yeah.
oh, man.
That's your new nickname.
Someone. Yeah, let's see. The film's initial tagline. It seems like someone throwing down the gauntlet that we have here, a new horror icon in the making. Was this a mere marketing tool for the film's initial release? Was there a concentrated effort and intent from the beginning to send the film off into franchise territory?
No.
Why is it you think that Night of the Demons never took off the way other titles in the genre have? I don't know if that's true because it made 2 sequels and a remake. But
and we're talking about it right now.
Yeah.
Way to kind of bum us out.
And it's sold out on Amazon.
well, I guess the question is the marketing. Were you involved with that at all? And
Not much, but that tagline was actually Walter Johnson, a bunch of us just sitting around, I think when we were making fun of Demon Boogie, and we decided that Night of the Demons would be as a matter of fact, what happened was whoever was going to distribute, I think the initial theatrical distributor took about 10 of the titles I'd come up with that they thought were the best, and they went and asked kids in malls, oh, we got 10 new films coming out, and they rattled off the titles, say, which one do you think you'd want to see? And most of them said, oh, Night of the Demons sounds good. So they were, of course, talking about the same film, but they just said, okay, Night of the Demons is the title that
Pretty good way to do it.
Yeah.
yeah, it grabs
Unbiased,
everyone.
yeah.
So they came back and said, okay, Night of the Demons is the title. So at that point, I guess we were just kind of sitting around and said, and we were still in the Halloween party mode. It was when we made it, it was Halloween party. So it was still party on our mind. And Walter, I think, just threw it out there as a joke. Hey, Angela's having a party. Jason and Freddy are too scared to come, but you'll have a hell of a time. And we all laughed, and the publicist or someone said, oh, that's good.
That's it.
So that's kind of how it
So
happened.
you can't use Halloween because somebody owns Halloween, but you can use Freddy and Jason, 2
Yeah.
names from franchises.
Well,
So
they
weird.
didn't threaten to sue us.
Right.
should have Michael Myers in there just to
Yeah.
be a jerk. Too.
So just to be absolutely clear before I go too far down the road, Demon Boogie's available as a title.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We're on that.
There's going to be a film. called
Although
Demon
we
Boogie.
did a rap song at the end of Night of the Demons 3, and
Called Demon Boogie?
we called it Demon
Oh, cool.
Boogie as an honor.
Okay, good.
As a person,
Good to
a
know.
private joke between me and my brother Dennis.
Okay, nice.
2 people asked about the lipstick scene, BJ and Justin Bay. Essentially, how long did the famous lipstick scene how long did it take to be shot? And then BJ wants to know, was there anything Linnea Quigley would have said no to regarding the lipstick scene?
No, I mean, we discussed it with her, and we knew what we were going to do, and she was cool with it. I mean, it's an effect.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Linnea's pretty. I mean, she knows why she's popular and what. I mean, she's a doll to work with. She's a seasoned vet, and she knows,
By that point, she'd already done, a few.
Yeah,
Slime
she'd done a few,
Bubble-Rama
and she'd done
and-
some super, really low budget, the kind we were talking about, home movie almost kind
really?
of budget.
Yeah.
So for her, Night of the Demons was actually one of her bigger films. That and Return of the Living Dead were like her big films, really. So, no, I don't think she had a problem with it. Never broached it or anything. I mean, hell, she walks around, frontal nudity.
She just posed nude in a gore zone
Yeah,
at
she
whatever
was in
age she is
gore
now, and she
zone.
was totally fine, right?
Yeah,
So-
yeah. So yeah, she's well, yeah. If I looked that good,
Yeah.
I would too. You wouldn't see me in any clothes. I'd be running around flopping all over the place. Look at me, I'm naked.
And how long did it take to shoot that particular?
Not too long. We lit it, set it up, and we did it in 2 takes, and we were done. It just worked out really well.
There's a good story on the commentary about because Steve Johnson, the effects artist, ended up marrying her after this for a little while.
Right, and he actually had to do a casting of her breasts, which means she had to come in.
First time he met her, I think.
Right, he had just met her. She had to come in. That's why she was there for the casting. So she had to take off her shirt, and then he had to take the goop and rub it all over her boobs. And I said, well, after that, you do kind of owe her dinner.
So, yeah. And another 2-part question about the remake. Johnny H wants to know what your honest opinion of the remake is. I don't know why he put honest in all caps. I know the answer because you say this in the commentary, but your thoughts on the remake, and are there any news on the new Night of the Demons movie? Because I know for a while they've been trying to make a sequel to that remake.
We're still plugging away there. I think of all the horror remakes that have been made in the last decade, I think the Night of the Demons remake is one of the best. And you could argue I'm biased because I'm one of the producers, but I saw the script. When Adam and Jace gave me the first draft of the script, I said, this is really good. I mean, I had notes, but I said, this is really good, guys. I'm really...
So they kept you pretty involved from the get-go.
Oh, yeah. The only thing I wasn't involved was during actual production, because another film I was set to direct was going to happen after Night of the Demons, but Night of the Demons, because of the hurricane in New Orleans, pushed everything back. And then it ended up being the exact same 3 weeks I was doing this other film, Bigfoot, as a director. So I was involved with, I gave him notes on the script, and then I gave him notes on the cut, and in post-production. But I wasn't there on set during production because I was directing another film. But actually, I didn't want to be too involved because the whole point was that Adam make his Night of the Demons. I already made mine. I wasn't there to remake mine. The last thing I want to do is be, directing another Night of the Demons film myself. So I think, Adam and Jace did a great job with the script, and then I think Adam did a really nice job directing. And I know he's done other films before and since that he personally likes better, but I think it's his best film.
It's I actually like it a lot. I think it's a lot of fun.
I
I remember
do too.
there's a sequence, I think, cut to, I want to say, a Typo Negative song in the middle with 2 of the girls that I think is excellent. Yeah. Which I love that scene.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. He everyone said, oh, is there going to be the dance? Well, okay, there wasn't the dance like Amelia, but there was that dance that's pretty cool and creepy. And
the lipstick.
And the lipstick.
Their version of that was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. They took it to the next step.
Do they still play it for comedy? I haven't seen it. I tend not to watch remakes when it's something, especially when they're fun movies.
Yeah.
Right. Scary movies and stuff, I think, you can remake and try to be
fun.
But when when it's about sense of humor, it seems like a hard thing to bottle and remake.
Well,
like Fright Night was surprised that the Fright Night remake worked.
Yeah, it does. It's got a lot of humor. It's, it's not 80s humor. It's
Contemporary.
It's
I'll watch
the
it.
new millennial humor, but it works really well. And Adam is a big punk rock fan, so it has a great soundtrack. And then obviously we had a lot more money than we had on Night of the original. So we had a lot more. He asked me once, he goes, you have all these great emblems for Susie Q and Anarchy, Anthrax and all that, but you only have one Bauhaus song. I said, because that's all we could afford. It's like, whereas the remake has Concrete Blonde and Barbarella Tones. And
Yeah, it's great
any punk rock
soundtrack.
band you can think of is in there.
And he did because I remember seeing you guys there, he did like a concert when the movie.
Yeah, that was
like
a great.
show?
Yeah, they did a show where all the bands who had contributed a song to Night of the Demons. E1, who was the distributor that released the DVD and Blu-ray, put on a concert at, was it the Safari?
Cool.
It was someplace on. Oh, now I totally forgot.
Yeah, I can't remember which. It was a punk
on,
rock club, but I can't remember which one.
I thought it was on Santa Monica Boulevard or something like that.
Yeah, do you remember, babe? Dragonfly.
Dragonfly. That's it,
Yeah.
That was pretty awesome, though.
She's my memory.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
My wife Susan is sitting in the booth with us. And
that was quick recall.
She's got like mine like a steel trap, whereas mine is more like a sieve.
Yeah.
Dragonfly, and all the bands that had contributed to the remake soundtrack all performed together. It was a great show.
Yeah.
Grade 45 actually wrote a song called Night of the Demons, which is the title song for the remake. And it's a great song too. So,
all right, 3 people say I should watch it. I think we're having Adam and Jason on really soon.
Yeah, they're coming on in a couple
that'll
of
be a
weeks.
good time. All right.
Now, there are a lot of people who really badmouth it because, they're just purists. It's like, and I told Adam, I said, listen, there are people that are going to hate it no matter what you do.
Oh, it's like the Evil Dead remake. Obviously, got a lot of heat like that.
Yeah. Which actually, if you weren't comparing it to Evil Dead, it was actually a pretty good horror film.
No, it was a good
My
film.
only problem with the Evil Dead remake was it came out after Cabin in the Woods, and I thought Cabin in the Woods
It had
was
put the nail in that world.
Exactly. It's like Cabin in the Woods already was kind of the unofficial Evil Dead remake.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Right.
They were a day short and a day late and $1 short.
And what was the status of the follow-up? Because I know for a while you guys were talking about doing one with Anthony
I'm
Hitchcock's
still trying.
directing.
I'm still trying to put it together. I mean, we got such a great crew assembled. We got Anthony Hitchcock.
Hickox. I have trouble
Hickox.
saying it.
I don't normally, but of course, now that I'm being recorded,
Grilled. You're being grilled.
Fucking it up. Oh, I said a bad word.
It happens.
But yeah, we have Harry Manfredini doing the music, who
nice.
of course scored Friday the 13th, and Gabe Bartalos, who created the Leprechaun franchise makeup, is doing the makeup. So we have a great crew put together. We have a terrific script by Sean Trotta that's really funny. I mean, laugh out loud, funny, with some great gory, gooey deaths, and a couple of cute little plot twists. So I think it's a really good. It'll be a good addition to the lexicon. It's just trying to get all the element. But the problem is when you're doing a film like this, where so and so owns these rights and so and such owns these rights, you got to make everyone happy and get everyone together on the same page. So it just takes a lot longer to put it all together.
And what about as a director? Is there a project you've been chasing personally to try to get made, even non-genres, anything?
I have an idea for a film that can be done very, very cheaply and very effectively. I'm
reaching for my wallet.
It can be
Let's do
done
it here.
exactly. So Susan and I are actually talking about producing it ourselves and financing it ourselves, and then we'll just sell it outright to a distributor for actual money up front.
Right.
MG only.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, also in the camera, like we were saying, the technology has improved so much even since Brain Dead.
Yeah.
That it's actually, and speaking of Brain Dead, because I cannot leave this, titles, I have no idea. Okay, so how come Dead Alive in New Zealand was Brain Dead, but then they weren't allowed to be called Brain Dead when it came to America because there's that little Bill Pullman
Corman
film
movie,
Yeah.
which is actually a cool little movie, interesting, like Bud Court, called Brain Dead. And then your film comes out, it's called Brain Dead, but you didn't have any problems. So I'm curious. I don't know much about title.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone threatened to sue Peter Jackson's film. I think the American distributor just made the decision, there's a Brain Dead out, a Roger Corman film, let's just call this something else. And
right.
They called it Dead Alive. Now, the funny thing was, that's the only title I knew it by. I knew about the Bud Court film, but I thought no one's going to remember that. And Brain Dead just seemed like such a great title for my film. It's like, well, this really is, because they're not zombies. Their brains are being eaten by parasites. So they are brain dead, even though they're, ambulatory. So it just seemed like the perfect title. And then when people said, well, Peter Jackson's film, it honestly occurred to me, it didn't occur to me. I thought, well, when they go to foreign countries, they'll probably change the title anyway. I mean, Witchboard is called Spiritica in Italy. And
you should have been like Dead Alive or something in New Zealand, just as
to
do a twist.
Exactly. And I said, so that's what I said. I said, watch, when it goes to New Zealand, they'll change ours to Dead Alive over there, But they didn't. They kept everywhere that's, for all the foreign markets still call it Brain Dead, which surprised me. It just never, because you don't have any say in that.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's like I was surprised that they kept the title Brain Dead even when they went to.
So people can't sue about titles, because I never knew about titles, how that works. So basically, somebody else could have made a film called Halloween, anything, and they could have even called it just Halloween.
Right.
Wow. Interesting. I'm surprised.
Now they might have been able to. You can't copyright a title. You legally cannot copyright. Now, someone could still claim damages by claiming that you made it look like your film was a sequel to theirs.
Right.
So you would have to say, well, we called it Halloween, but we have a big monster on the cover, not Michael Myers, and you could argue that. The reason most films don't share titles, at least in the studio system, is it's just the MPAA agreement that if if Paramount makes a film called Bogus, then we can't over here at Sony make a film called Bogus because it'll confuse the audience. So we have to, like Scorsese's film Goodfellas was based on a book called Wise Guys, but De Palma had already made a comedy called Wise Guys. So even though the book they're based on was called Wise Guys, they changed their title to Goodfellas.
Interesting.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought there had been a case where Screamers came out, the Peter Weller weird science fiction film, and that there had been some lawsuit with Scream between the two. And now that I'm hearing this, that can't have been the case.
Yeah,
unless the
I never heard
UK
that.
has a different law. I don't know
Yeah,
if
it might
the
be
UK
overseas, but who knows?
I just remember that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. So we can all make another Brain Dead.
Yeah, well,
I'm making a Screamers.
the title of Scream, the script was a Scary Movie.
Scary movie.
Which they then ended up, but it was the same company, so I don't think
Right.
they were able to use the title.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So you're looking to self-finance now. Would you go the Kickstarter route with this new film now that you understand kind of maybe social media, social marketing more?
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, because we obviously wouldn't be trying to raise as much as we are trying to raise with Night of the Demons 2. It would be a very small sum. I don't know. That's something we can discuss.
We need an answer.
Yes.
No.
Right now.
This instant. Yes, the
exactly.
answer. Okay, I will give you a definite maybe.
Okay, good.
There we go. And the Dark Delicacies thing, that's happening Saturday, right?
Saturday, 2 p.m. at Dark Delicacies.
Okay.
We got the casts of Night of the Demons and Witchboard there to sign.
Oh, wow, cool.
Sign Blu-rays up the wazoo.
So if you're in LA and you want to meet Kevin, go to Dark Delicacies.
And if you want to get a signed Blu-ray, that's the only way. You can't pre-order anymore. They've shut off pre-orders because they just had so many. So the only shot you have is to get there early, get a Blu-ray right there at the store, and then everyone there will sign it for you.
Cool. Except he is going to sign one for us on air, I hope.
Oh, that's
because we're going to give one away to
one away.
We're going to give one away to one of you listeners, and we will
I brought
decide.
a Sharpie.
Whoa!
I think we should
You guys
decide on
didn't.
Facebook after. We'll wait till Friday.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
funny. If I'd known you were going to do this, I could have brought one. I have about 5 at home, and I had Linnea sign all of them for me because she might not be able to make it to the signing. So I thought I'll get her signature now, and then everyone else will sign it later.
We know why she's in town.
Yeah.
We talked to somebody 2 weeks ago, and he told us that he was shooting something with her here.
Right, and she
her
might
head.
and she might be there if she if it works out, but they push back or something, so she doesn't know yet. It'll be an 11th hour surprise for the fans.
Well, we'll get you to sign it with a lipstick.
Okay.
I think
go.
that'd be fitting.
I'll just sign Linnea's name.
Yeah, that'd be good. I like that.
That works.
Yeah, look on our Facebook page. We'll figure out a way
Yeah.
to give this to the appropriate person.
That's right. Who lives in America.
Good
So I don't have to send it to France.
Yeah. Oh, they don't want it anyway. We're all speaking English.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much for dropping by and
Oh, my
talking
pleasure.
about these films.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll definitely pick them up, the Scream Factory titles.
Yeah, after being interviewed by USA Today, I wanted to come slum it a little bit.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We're in Van Nuys. There aren't even lights outside. Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, and we have another show next week.
Next week, Todd
Yes.
Farmer.
Todd
Farmer's
is
joining
coming
us.
in
Yep.
for just to join us for
Just in time for Valentine's Day.
It'll
Yep.
be fun.
3D.
Just so the audience knows, that means I won't be here. So
Yeah.
you might
spirit,
want
though.
to find something better to do.
Well, again, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Okay.